Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work on Twitter at Sheng_Peng and also on NBC Sharks.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me on Twitter at halfwall_hockey, my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. This week, we are going to share a little bit of a possible or probable or hopeful
A way too early off-season plan.
Too early off-season plans. We're going to cover just how much cap space the Sharks have, some thoughts about who stays and who goes from the current Sharks roster, maybe some trades that we've thought of, as well as some free agents that are out there to try and maybe improve the Sharks or at least tweak this god-awful team.
Connor called it the low point of his career, losing to this year's Sharks.
Yeah, that's our Stanley Cup, is having Connor McDavid lament losing to us. That's perfect. But it's going to be fun. It's going to give a little bit of a highlight of who's out there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Before then, we're going to talk a little bit about Will Smith. We need a little banner that says Will Smith Watch.
Yep.
Because I think we're going to probably just bring it up every week until we have a decision.
WSW.
Yeah, Will Smith Watch. We'll do a little live draft lottery, see if we pull a winner. And
have a little fun with Tankathon. Let's see how we do.
Preview what the Sharks' odds are for the next couple days. I think it's Tuesday or Monday this week.
It's one Tuesday.
Of those days. Tuesday. Talk a little bit about.
For shame, the most important day in Sharks history, and you don't know it.
Remember, I don't even know what day it is now, man. We're going to talk about the coaching search that maybe the Sharks are going to go through, some candidates possibly. A little bit about the news about the Barracuda staff that seems to be staying on for next year. Some Thomas Spear talk. And we're going to revisit our preseason predictions before we get into our off-season plans, which, spoiler, did okay. Honestly, better than I thought we did. We did okay.
I did less than okay because I got the main premise wrong.
Okay.
Entire team.
But the main we'll get there. We'll get there. Anyway. So Sheng, starting off, we need, again, the banner, Will Smith Watch. Yes. What, if any, is there for Will Smith news for this week?
Last I really checked on it a couple of days ago, it seems like it is a holding pattern that there is still a decision to be made. It hasn't been made yet. As we've talked about before, it would have made sense for Will to announce that he was staying right after Ryan Leonard did. So I think that it is meaningful that he did not. And so I think that there is still a decision to be made here. When it'll be made, I'm not really sure, but I think it could happen in the next week or so, if I'm just guessing, the next week or two. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of a guess. I'm still digging on that. And so when I find out more, if I can say, I'll say. But I do feel pretty strongly, though, that the Sharks do indeed want to bring him on. They do think he's ready. Mm-hmm. I think that Will hasn't ruled it out, or he would have already. And so I think that there is still a decision to be made there.
I envision a world where the Sharks win the draft lottery and he signs the very next day. And the Sharks have the Sharks fans on Twitter go absolutely nuts for like 48 hours straight.
You know what? The Sharks should send Will Smith to be their representative at the draft lottery. And so Boston is not that far from New York. And so it'd be perfect.
Yeah, I love it. No, I don't think we're going to get a decision before the draft lottery, although who knows? Maybe Will Smith has waited until the next Monday to just know one way or the other. But I think it'll be after that, just for whatever reason.
I agree.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. My prediction, I think, was he goes back. Yours prediction was he comes out, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, still sticking with it? Do you think he comes out?
Yeah, I think that it's taking time for a reason. Mm-hmm. If he wanted to go back, he could have done so pretty quickly after Leonard said he was going back.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I do remember a lot of times right after the seasons are over, typically when they go back, I feel like that decision happens a lot quicker. And when I'm just looking at college prospects, like if they're going to go back, they normally say like right after the season's over that they're going back. So it is
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm not sure about the history of that. I do know
Hmm.
that there were a couple recent examples of guys taking a little longer, Zegris and Cooley that I wrote
Hmm.
about a month ago or so. And there's different reasons. I know Cooley said at first he was going back and he changed his mind.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
meant their
different
decision
circumstances.
to go back. I think Cooley
Right,
said that
right,
pretty
right,
early. Yeah.
right. I'm not sure about the history of that.
Hmm. So who knows? We're literally just grasping at straws trying to
Right,
find an
but
answer.
if he did know he was going back though, there it doesn't seem to be a reason why he would hold the information.
Hmm.
And I will say that as far as I know on the Sharks side of it, that they think that there's still a decision to be made there. It's not
Okay.
like the Sharks were told 3 weeks ago and they're just holding it for some reason.
Hmm. Sandbagging it.
Why?
I have no idea. They're just trying to drum up some extra hope, I think. Yeah,
I guess.
I got nothing. All right, Shang, I'm
Hmm.
sure that you have visited this website multiple times over the past couple of weeks, as I visited daily and yeah, are updated on the odds daily throughout the season. But the Sharks have the best odds to land Malcolm Celebrini in
Oh,
this
and the
year's
draft lottery,
draft
the news
lottery.
part of this is that the draft lottery is on May 7th. So that's finally been decided. That's out there. I don't
Hmm.
think the time has been announced yet, but I think it depends on whether or not the playoff game is a central or Eastern time zone game.
Oh, interesting.
And the intermission, what time the intermission is, but it's going to be about the same time as last year. It's not going to be anything
Hmm.
unusual, I'm sure. And I do have something to tease there. I can't say, but I have some pretty exciting draft lottery news
Yep.
that you guys will find out in a couple of days.
I already know, but I'm not going to spoil it, and I'm pretty excited. Okay, so Sharks have a 25.5% chance to win the number one overall pick.
Hmm.
Um, the worst the Sharks could finish is third, which if
Right.
you go to the old odds section here has a nicely graphed out
That's really the
table.
only thing I visit on here. I don't pull the draft simulator because that's really a pointless
We're
exercise. Sorry,
we're
guys.
doing it today. We're gonna do it today, and we're gonna choose how
Fine.
many.
This will be my pool edit. I'll let you do it for me because you
Okay,
have it on screen, so you can also do my pool. We will
all
do
right.
each take a turn.
All right, we're each going to do one then. So
Okay.
actually, with the funny part is just because a lot of people may not know, the Sharks are most likely to pick third. It's not even like
Right. That's true.
the most likely is one or two. We're most likely to get third at 55.7%. So just prepare to be disappointed. And I don't know. We all know
Right. It's
the
roughly
answer.
like a 25% shot chance at first. I mean, people can
Hmm.
see it right there, but an 18% chance at second
Yeah.
and a 55 at third.
Yeah. So just prepare to be disappointed. Prepare for this team right here in second to get first. Because that's the way
Artem
it's going to go.
Lushunov era.
Yeah, Artem Levshinov or Ivan Demidov. But all right, you want to do your poll or my poll? Let's do it.
You can pull for me right now.
All right, here comes Shang's.
Okay.
Oh my God, you actually got
Yeah.
that. All right, so the Sharks
You're
would be
you're welcome, Calgary.
yeah, yeah. No, number one, Calgary, you're welcome. Number two, damn, I feel like I've done this 20 times in a row and have never gotten the Sharks. So good work at getting it on the first shot.
You're gonna
Sharks
get
would
Chicago right
also
here.
Yes, I will. The Chicago will, or Sharks will also be getting the 14th overall pick in this draft because of Pittsburgh not moving
Right.
up.
Which
So,
is fine because if Pittsburgh moves up, as you can see in the chart of where the picks will go, chances are if Pittsburgh moves up, they're going to move up all the way to I think what the 4 or 5, right?
fourth,
That's
yeah.
like that's their most likely move up. And in that
Hmm.
case, I would project that they keep it. Depends on your position on that. Some people do think that you want the unprotected 2025 Pittsburgh because they're an old team. They'll get worse, maybe, and you have
Maybe.
a shot at James Higgins. But if you want to play it safe, though, you probably just want their pick this year
Yeah.
and not play around with because they're going to try to win still with the team they have. So who knows? You project that they'll be worse because they're older, but you never know. They
Yeah.
might make the playoffs next year, make a run. All of a sudden, your 2025 protected pick is worse than your 2024 middle of the first round pick.
And that Pittsburgh pick is kind of right around round where, like, I think there's still going to be a very good player at
The
14.
consensus of the draft, kind of right, the layers, right?
Yeah. So right after 14 to like 14, 15, 16, it starts to like really dive down in terms of, well, theoretically in terms of quality. So,
Sure.
all right, here we go. Arizona. Damn it. Well, actually, Utah, right? Utah.
Yeah. Salt Lake.
Congratulations. This is the outcome that
SLC Celebrini.
the SL Celebrinesies. It would
Oh,
be
you still got the number 2 at least.
I
So.
did still get number 2. Not terrible. This would be a. I just have been thinking about this scenario in general. This would be just like the ultimate kick in the teeth for Arizona fans if they won the freaking lottery after they leave. Because like,
Right.
how long have they been trying to get like the guy in Arizona? And like, man,
Well, too that the day before is that land auction
yeah,
that Murillo probably is going to lose because I have no confidence that
hmm
Murillo is going to be able to reactivate the Coyotes in that 5-year window he has. He has to build,
sure,
basically have an arena constructed in 5 years at 2, more or less. And so I have zero confidence in that dude. I'm sure that's not surprising. I don't think anybody has any real confidence in him. So
yep,
chances are the double kick would be they lose the auction
yep,
and they win the number 1 pick, but
amazing.
going to Salt Lake City.
Yeah, this is I mean, I wouldn't be terribly upset about the scenario because I do like the young players that are on the Coyotes currently, and I think it would be a cool addition to their
It's good
team.
for them. It's good for the
Yeah,
team
but I would hate it for the Sharks.
and for the Coyotes fans.
Yeah, and it's also not as bad as Chicago. So, all
Yeah.
right, you
If
win.
you're a fan of the Mammoth or whatever we're going to call that team, then yes, this is
Yeah,
good for
the
you.
Utah Yeti. Yep.
The
All right, that's it.
Yetis.
I swear I could do that thing like 100 times and never get the
Why?
Sharks.
why?
I could.
Why?
I mean,
Why?
I just
Why
never.
do you punish yourself like
I
this?
don't know.
You're what you do has no bearing on what's going to
I
happen.
know. I don't know. And it's just like flipping a coin, literally, just with fancier graphics.
Yeah.
But still, it makes me, I don't know. I do it once a day, pretty much.
It's like if the Sharks were going to the playoffs and you just sim them in whatever NHL versions out there. Like, what's the point?
Oh, that'd be a fun exercise. How many sims would it take for the 2023, 2024 Sharks to win the Stanley Cup?
Oh,
Like, is there
that's
a
good.
world out there where that terrible team wins the
Do
Stanley
we do
Cup?
we have the days it would take to run that
Yeah,
simulation
we need
for that
like
to happen?
12 Xboxes all at the same time. There's that YouTube series. What is it? Is it Dorktown? It's John Bois or Bois. I can't ever say his last name. He does like sports videos that are like long form and
Oh,
really in
sure.
depth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do crazy stuff like that where they try and break video games and turn sports video games into nonsense. So they'll like create
Oh,
a
really?
team of all like 5'2" basketball players and then sim out like full 30 seasons of it and stuff. It's very fun. Um, but anyway, we digress. We have actual things to talk about. Next on our list is the coaching search after David Quinn was fired last week. Any updates there? Any thoughts on that, Sheng?
Well, I had an article a couple of days ago, just stuff that I've sort of pulled up so far. I feel like it's a little bit early. I know that Mike Rear is at the U18s, and so of course he could be calling guys from Finland, but I do think that it's still a little bit early on it. It seems like I talked with a couple of and they may have heard back from the Sharks in the last couple of days, but I talked with a couple of prospective candidates, likely candidates, if you want to call them that, a couple of days ago, and they hadn't received any sort of call from the Sharks yet. And so it makes me think that it is still a little early in the process. You do hear about some of the biggest names out there, and they might go
Hmm.
fast because teams are going to jump on them. We're talking about your Craig Berube's, your maybe your Todd McClellans, right? Those type of guys, the veteran guys with a lot of playoff in Berube's case, Stanley Cup experience. But those
Sure.
guys probably wouldn't be coming to the Sharks anyway. I'm not sure why they would want to be a part of this specific situation. And so maybe the Sharks won't even enter into that dance with them because it just what's the point? So those guys might go quick because let's say the Devils may want to jump on Berube, for example, because they want to have a playoff caliber, playoff ready NHL coach for next year as early as possible. But the Sharks maybe they have a little more time because they're probably not competing for that class, I guess.
Sure.
And if not, then we might get something of a, I guess it would be more of a secondary candidate, but it's kind of where the Sharks are, to be honest. Also, too, I pulled up some stuff about Jay Woodcroft
Mm.
and how when he was a Sharks assistant coach from 2008 to 15, he wasn't the most beloved around the team, wasn't the best to people below him, not necessarily players, I don't think. But anyway, though, that of course was the source that told me that mentioned that to me, and I corroborated elsewhere too. Try to, when you kind of hear these negative things about people, you want to make sure that it's not just somebody with an axe to grind or that sort of thing. So that's why I try to get it from two different sides. Anyway, source reminded me that a decade is a long time, and so Jay could have improved a lot in that area, and maybe he has. So I don't want to sell him short either,
Sure.
that he couldn't have grown in that respect. And also, too, another source mentioned to me a good dark horse candidate in Todd Nelson. And Todd Nelson has won a couple of Calder Cups, a lot of NHL experience, just interim run as an Oilers head coach in 2014-15, but has been an assistant with actually both the Atlanta Thrashers, which is always a fun callback,
Hmm.
and also recently with the Dallas Stars, 2018 to 2022. So pretty recent NHL experience. And I think Patrick Williams, in the podcast we did with Patrick about why the Barracuda are so bad, Patrick raved about Todd Nelson.
Yeah.
And so he's a guy that I think is kind of interesting because he is definitely a secondary candidate. He's not a Craig Berube. He's not a David Carl, that sort of hot name, Stanley Cup winner, national champion like Carl.
Right.
But he's a guy that seems like would be worth talking to at least. And so, yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. And then the one thing that's out there a lot that I wonder about, and I wonder what's going to happen with it, is I know Elliot Friedman has mentioned it a lot that the Sharks seem to really want to bring somebody in that has a Sharks history.
Sure.
And other people observe that a lot of candidates mentioned either have a Sharks history or a Mike Greer history,
Hmm.
i.e., they played with Mike or something like that. David Quinn had that, obviously, the BU connection. But man, I kind of hope not. I'm not saying that if they hire a Marco Sturm or somebody with a Sharks connection, that's automatically a bad hire. It certainly is not. But and I said this last time, I think, that when in the coaching search or even a GM search before, why would you limit your pool to a culture that was, yes, very positive, but wasn't like you won 10 Stanley Cups with it, and it isn't
Sure.
unique to the it was a great culture overall in San Jose for 20 overall. There's some negatives, but overall for 2 decades it was. But it's not something that I don't know. Yeah, this is not. I'm trying to think of the best example. This is not the Jordan Phil Jackson Bulls 6 championships in 8 years that you're trying
Sure.
to distill. You don't need to recapture that. You can set something new. So I really hope that
Hmm.
is not that big a deal,
Sure.
that Elliott is basically that. I don't know. He's wrong, I guess, because that just doesn't make sense to me.
But he hasn't. I mean, like all of the, not all, but a lot of the hires have been some sort of either Greer connection or Sharks connection of
Sure,
some kind.
fair, right,
So I think that's what he's
right
going
down to
off
the
of.
staff too, right? And
Hmm.
I'm sure people have told him the same thing too. I'm sure that there are people in San Jose that say that to him, and I'm not
Sure.
obviously not questioning Elliot's sources. I'm questioning
No,
the intelligence
of
of
that
that
of that move.
thinking.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
And
would think. Yeah. And even David Carl has like a pseudo connection, right? His brother
that's a
played on the
little bit of a
Sharks.
reach, though. Yeah, his brother obviously played for the Sharks, but that
So
one
we'll
is
meet in the middle and
I
say David Carl.
yeah. I don't consider that a Sharks or Mike Greer connection.
True.
Not that I know of, at least a Mike Greer
Hmm.
connection there. But yeah, I would like to have somebody from the Sharks actually explain to me what is so special about a Sharks culture that you've got to have ex Shark in there. And I would say chances are, if someone were to talk honestly about it, they would say, yeah, it's not that big a deal, man. It's not, it'd be nice,
Hmm.
but it's not that big a deal. Because it's not like it sells tickets or something like that.
Sure.
Like bringing back Mike Greer doesn't sell a ticket. I
Yeah.
guess, I mean, only two
Maybe
people I can think
Marco,
of is
but
if you put Joe Thornton and Patrick Morrow behind a bench, then yes,
Yeah,
that would get attention. I don't know if it'd sell tickets, but maybe it would. These
I think it
people,
would, but I don't think we
yeah,
would be any better.
exactly, yeah. They have no experience really
Mm,
coaching either of those guys.
yeah.
So those are the two big names, I guess. But besides those guys, like bringing Marco Sturm behind the bench
Mhm.
is not going to
I do think Marcus Sturm is
move.
a good coach, though. That's
Oh,
the
sure,
other
sure, sure. I'm not
underlying
saying
bit.
he's so. I'm not. I don't want to go the other way and say that if they hire a shark, that's just stupid. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not ruling out X sharks either. But I
sure.
just hope that the pool is not,
Yeah,
being
limited
a
to that.
shark isn't that high up on their priority list,
Yeah,
because I don't think it really matters. Is
yeah.
what I'm saying.
This is true, and maybe there would be a little bit, yeah, forward thinking if you expanded the pool.
That's not forward thinking. It's just basic thinking
Yeah,
because I don't understand that if there is a fixation on that, I don't understand it. I guess the only thing I can think of is if you hire somebody with the Sharks background, that they wouldn't have any sticker shock looking at renting an apartment or buying a house here. So I guess
agreed.
that's good.
Yeah,
That they're ready for dropping 25% more or 50% more than they should for a house, and they're okay with that.
it
Besides
would
that,
be
I can't really think of.
it would be very interesting for the Marco Sturm arc to be, scratched at the very last minute of a Dallas hockey game in 2005, and then, traded for Joe Thornton, and the time he returns is to coach the Sharks team that is
That
awful.
would be there are good stories in there, but not
Yeah,
again not headline grabbing
yeah,
stories.
I know, but
Mike
it's
Greer
just an
coming back
interesting.
is a good story too,
Mhm.
but it's not.
Not amazing.
They're not going to make a movie about
No, no, I agree.
it. So I don't know.
Just
I don't know.
yeah, I think there might be a little bit of that. Maybe, familiarity with San Jose makes it more likely to attract somebody that's a better coach that you couldn't attract otherwise because they're just familiar with the area.
Well, like I said, yeah, that they're prepared to pay 25% more for real estate. So okay, that's good. That's good. It's good that
Yeah,
you don't have to tell David Carl how
you
much
just
he's
like the
paying
ring.
for a house as opposed to
True,
university paid housing at University of Denver.
true. And
So
we're
yeah,
really bringing
I guess
David
it's
Carl
useful.
for his Magnus Corona connection.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the reason why we're getting David Carl. I think they will hire somebody. I don't know. I think it's going to be a good hire though. I have a lot of faith. There's a lot of candidates out there that I get kind of excited about. So that means they're going to end up hiring like Bruce Boudreau or something. Even though he's a good
Well,
coach.
that's a
Uh,
non-Sharks connection
that's true. He is a good coach
and
as
non-Mike
well.
Greer, I think. I
But
think.
do something cool. Go hire David Carl. Just do it. It's going to be cool. And it's maybe it falls on its face, or maybe you have your coach for the next like 2 decades. Who knows?
Well, like I said, I don't know if Mike's gonna have a lot of more shots. Mike Greer, that is, gonna have a lot more
True.
shots at this. So I
Yeah,
don't think
that's fair.
he can afford to. If he fucks around on this, you'll find out.
That's fair.
I think.
So Bruce Boudreau it is. All right, let's move on a little bit. The um, the news came out sometime last week. We've been kind of delayed this week in the podcast. If you guys haven't been able to tell, for a multitude of reasons.
Yes.
One of them being that I've been trying to get some guests for the next couple weeks to lined up. So working on that. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But news came out that it's very likely the majority of the Barracuda staff is staying for next year.
All of them, at the
All of
majority.
them.
At least behind the bench. I don't know about support
Mhm.
staff.
Yeah, at least behind the bench. So there was kind of a negative reaction to this on Sharks Twitter and throughout the Sharks fandom, mostly because the Barracuda were horrible this year and also last year and most years. And a lot of people wanted to blame John McCarthy for that, but I I've kind of, and it was probably our talk with Patrick Williams, and you're gonna mention this too, I imagine, kind of changed my opinion a little bit on what the Barracuda are and what their directive is likely, and I I honestly am okay with John McCarthy coming back. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I am. I've said it from the get go. I think it's really easy to blame the coach, of course, and I would say the same thing about David Quinn too.
Sure.
There are two jobs.
Yeah.
The both coaches, their two job, the two main jobs was getting the most out of the team
Hmm.
and development. And I will still argue that with the shit shovel that Greer handed Quinn, that I think Quinn actually did the best he could with that team. As sad as that sounds, a 47-point team that Connor McDavid says is the low point of his career.
That's our Stanley Cup. I love
I honestly was looking for a story to write yesterday because I didn't
it.
really have much that yet last night, and then I was looking at some recent Shark stories, and I ran into that story that Pierre LeBrun wrote. I read that quote. That's like I couldn't believe that he actually
Yeah.
said that.
They got us back by just pantsing us in that last
Oh,
game. It was like the worst, one
oh
of the
my
worst games
god!
I've ever
It
seen.
just makes me laugh, and it was kind of a
Yeah.
throwaway quote because the at least the way that they they
Hmm.
they pushed or advertised the story on Twitter, the Athletic that is, that they didn't use that quote. They used some other quote he used or he said. It just was
Amazing.
a throwaway buried in that story.
Great. Thanks, Connor. Love you too, buddy.
Worse than the first round exits, worse than missing the playoffs, worse than his collarbone injury. Was losing to the Sharks. I don't know why it makes me laugh so much.
Yeah,
So, and obviously,
thanks,
you can see the
Connor.
response online
Yeah.
that it was a good move for me to dig out that quote. And actually, that story has some other good stuff about. I try not to just pull stuff from pay sites to pull. I didn't. There's actually good stuff in that article still, even about the Sharks, that Edmonton had a team meeting after that loss and stuff like that.
Sure.
So there's good stuff in there. So if you don't subscribe to the Athletic, that story is worth a read if you're a Sharks fan, but or a Sharks hater.
It's funny.
But,
I agree. It's really funny. In some
uh,
ways, it's hilarious because like I even if like it's kind of like making fun of how terrible the Sharks are, and
I don't think he's
backhandedly,
kind of. I don't think he's kind of.
I think it's
There's no
funny that
kind
we
of.
we beat them that one time because screw them, you know. Even though
Yeah,
they killed us in the last game, which was awful. But I think it's funny that we beat them that one time.
it is. It is funny.
Hmm.
If the
So
Sharks hire Jay Woodcroft next, it's because
yeah,
the
there
Sharks
you
beat.
go.
So
That's it.
anyway, though,
Yeah,
yeah.
what a terrible friggin' season. I really am very happy that this it's done. I don't ever have to think about the Sharks. I watch good hockey pretty much every night now.
Right, right. I saw that you mentioned that, and
Yeah,
people took that was like your most popular tweet of the year, and
I
I think
know.
that too. I watched games like the Kings losing to Edmonton. I think it was game
Hmm.
4. They actually played really well. They outshot them like 30-10.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, the Kings are doing this great job of not losing the puck in the neutral zone, not feeding the Edmonton rush.
Hmm.
They're managing the puck great, getting in deep, or they're connecting on passes for clean entries.
Yeah.
Of course, they didn't win the game, but I mean that was not Sharks hockey, right?
Yeah.
The neutral zone was.
It was just like, yeah, just I don't remember what I think it was. I think I was watching Vegas versus Dallas at some point. I was just like, man, these are really good teams.
The
And I just,
real Western Conference Finals there, right?
yeah, I was like, holy cow. It just every single line is just on it. Every single line knows their role. Every single line like has the ability to, at least it's not like just there's a bunch of dudes out there that their whole job is fighting. It's like every line can score, and it was awesome. So
I'm
proud of
gonna
the guys.
actually make a. I'm going to not date myself, but I'm actually
Mm.
gonna be Steve Buscemi with a skateboard walking in here. The
Yeah.
Sharks playing this year to the neutral zone was like the Drake Kendrick Lamar beef, and the
Ah.
Sharks going up was one v 20. So
Hmm.
the Sharks being that one, and
Yeah.
the 20 being like there's 20 guys on an opposing team in the
Hmm.
neutral zone, clogging up the neutral zone for the Sharks are trying to move up to it.
Terrible.
I'm a big rat beef guy, so
Are you? Interesting.
anyway, though,
Heard about it. I haven't looked into it, but heard.
I think it's pretty hilarious. It's pretty fun. But anyway, though, so with the Barracuda staff, so I think the Barracuda got the most out of the team they had, more or less. We
Hmm.
talked to Patrick about it. This was not a great Barracuda team on paper, and they lost two of their best forwards in Ryan Carpenter and Justin Bailey to the Sharks. They had no legitimate starting goalie. And what are you going to do with this team? Even if you had those elements, they probably are still a fringe playoff team at best.
Hmm.
Maybe they're sixth, seventh in the Pacific Division. So, and actually, I found that the Barracuda were a much more competitive team than the Sharks. I went to. It took me a
Sure.
while to get to Barracuda games, but I think I made it to maybe 10 or close to there in the last couple of months. I made a lot of them at the end of the season, and they were in a lot of games. They lost a lot of games, but they were in a lot of games. And it makes me think that if they had some goaltending, that they would have been a lot closer to the playoff race to begin with. That would have been a start. And so I think that John and his staff kept him competitive. Staff including guys that they're bringing back, assistant coaches, Kyle Hagel, who works with the forwards, and Louis Mass, who works with the defense. And in terms of the development bit, that's the second thing that these coaches had to do. Obviously, we talked a lot about David Quinn and that he's done. I thought he did a good job. He and his staff of developing the Sharks players who were there, guys like Eklund and Thrun.
Hmm.
And I think with the Barracuda, I think there were guys who had made obvious gains. Mukamadulin, Cardwell,
For
Bordelot is
sure.
actually the biggest one. That's a win that they were able to turn him back into a credible prospect when he really was flagging there. I'll say, to put it nicely. And so I don't. I would I would like to hear everything I read online from people. I don't see a good reason why the Sharks need to fire these guys. The only thing I've seen, which this wasn't great, was the stuff around Martin Kaut and the cloud around that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's been concluded that it hasn't been concluded that Martin was accurate in a lot of his accusations. I don't think it's
Hmm.
been close to. I think most people assume that actually some of it seemed very fishy, I guess I would say. We'll put it nicely there for Martin too. There, that overall it seemed fishy, and so save for that, I'm not sure what you're firing the coaching staff for. I know
Hmm.
there was some stuff too over the summer about treatment of players, but as we dug into it, right, that treatment wasn't amazing and could be better, especially in the Bay Area. And going back to it, prices of housing and how expensive
Yeah.
it is to live here, that maybe you do want to treat your players and coaches amazing so it's more enticing for them to be here. But but it wasn't as if the Barracuda were treating their players badly compared to the rest of the AHL or being abusive or that sort of thing, right? It didn't rise to that level.
Hmm.
And so overall, I'm curious why people are so
Yeah.
yeah, so dead set that John McCarthy and his staff are the problem, or even Joe Will is the problem. And I have mentioned things of roster construction, which are more on Joe and on Mike Greer,
Sure.
but I don't see a smoking gun here that says this is a staff that needs to be from my vantage point. And I don't know if yeah, I don't know. I would like I haven't heard it. So
Yeah. I think the what I liked was the growth from the players that you mentioned, and I liked
mhm.
that John typically put them in, you know, places to succeed. Like
Yeah.
he gave the players that what they're good at, he put them in the roles that they're for. And he gave Mugabadula top, power play minutes. He gave him tough minutes. He gave Gushin power play minutes. He gave guys that fit their role a chance to expand on it and make an impact at it and get better at it. And guys like Cardwell are great stories of that. And Cardwell's got a motor that doesn't quit anyway. But like, I think he really just, if anything else, even if you don't think that McCarthy's a good coach, um, regardless, he puts the guys in a position to succeed. And most nights they play pretty hard. I would say they are very, very bad about like giving up leads and getting behind super early. They're very bad about that. A lot of games, it was like either they had a decent game and then they just gave up leads very late, or they
For
just
what it's
start off
worth, they were
slow.
much better than the Sharks.
True.
I don't think Maverick Bork is going to be like,
True.
man, that game we lost to the Barracuda last year. That's the lowest moment of my
Lowest
of
moment of my
my of
career.
my professional career.
And I think there was just more expected because of how in the past 2 years, because of the guys that were coming in, because of Eklund playing the whole last year on the CUDA. and it didn't happen. But still, the growth of the young players is all I really care about. And that's what I saw whenever I watched the Barracuda was that the guys that I liked were doing well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and like you said, put in position. So I'd like to hear if
Hmm.
someone wants to give me the, and I know that I'm usually pro coach. I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring back another reference. Even as I'm a big Lakers fan, I
Mm.
wasn't just fired Darvin Ham. I don't think that way. I don't think that way in general as a critic or analyst of sports,
Hmm.
even of teams that I'm a fan of. I know that's going to be not everybody's going to get that reference, but if you do get that reference, I have a
Sure.
lot of patience with coaches. I usually see things more as roster construction and the people you have on the roster than putting it on the coach.
Sure.
And so I would be curious what smoking guns, quote unquote, that the fans have that say that you need to axe a John McCarthy because I don't see that.
I'm fine with it. Give him another year. See how he's also still a very young coach, and maybe next year we've got some reinforcements coming, or they sign some veterans to like actually make a decent team.
I
Need a
think that
good
they will
goaltender.
make more of a. That's the sense I get. Like with the Sharks, I think they will make more of a push.
Hmm.
As Mike mentioned, he is looking to. He looks like he will bring in a more veteran
Sure.
goalie option, and that is a mistake that they did make. We've said many times that they
Yep.
rolled into the season with Makiniemi, Krona, and Romanov, and no dependable starter out of that. And predictably, Makaniemi got hurt. So they treated Makaniemi as sort of a reliable guy when they should have treated him more as a, hey, if he's healthy, then we're going to be in great shape and goal.
Yeah. If you had another guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did like the growth of Romanov as well. I think that
Mm-hmm.
was a good and a good segue to our next segment, which is on Thomas Spear.
Though
Um,
Romanov is more for the people who hate on the Nabokov. Nabokov works
yeah.
with the AHL goalies. Spear doesn't really. So
Yes.
Romanov, if you like a Romanov, that's going to be more on Nabokov.
You know, he, we'll see with him. Obviously, it's come out of nowhere. Still young, needs a lot more time, but
Sure.
I like his growth. So Thomas Spear is our next subject. You had put out a an article this week entitled "Sharks Want Goaltending Coach Thomas Spear Back."
Right,
So,
because when we talked with Mike, it was a little unclear because there was a question asked about David Quinn's staff
mhm,
and his assistant coaches. That was the wording used. And Mike said they are, we're going to keep them on for now, but they are welcome to seek out other jobs, which to me, again, I'm going to use another reference I use in the story. That's Deion Sanders talk for jumping that portal. So,
yeah, yeah,
so I think that includes Warsofsky too, which I know some people think that maybe he'll be interviewed for assistant coach, or I'm sorry, for Sharks head coach, maybe. But
mhm,
that's something I had to go back and circle back on. But that sounded like maybe not if Mike is saying that hey, you guys are free to look for another job. However, though, goaltending of course is separate from the bench behind the bench kind of work
mhm,
that Warsofsky and Scott Gordon and Brian Wiseman were doing.
mhm,
And also, there's an argument for keeping Brian Wiseman too, because that power play did look a lot better the last couple of months, and some people do give Wiseman a lot of credit for that. But anyway, going back to Spear though, so Spear obviously has given a lot of credit for the improvement for Mackenzie Blackwood's kind of revival, even Kakanen's better play this year.
yeah,
And so there was sort of a, he didn't seem like he fit into it. We asked uh, the
mhm,
exit interview day when Mike did not give David Quinn that vote of confidence. Mike was also asked about Thomas Spear, and he was very, very enthusiastic about Spear's work. And so I dug on that just to specifically wonder, well, what about Thomas Spear? Is he counted among the assistant coaches in terms of he's going to be free to look for work? And I know that Spears' contract is up, so
sure.
technically he can do that. But I know that the Sharks actively want to keep him though, and
Mhm.
chances are that's going to work out.
I'd be happy with that. Finally,
Yeah.
to get some solid goaltending. Um, and growth with guys like Blackwood and Kakin even were pretty substantial this year. So I'd be excited. And I do wonder about that Ryan Warsofsky thing.
Well, I don't know because I know that he was sort of the
Mm-hmm.
well, a couple years ago he was young, the sort of the young hotshot AHL head
Sure.
coach type. I'm not sure if I can think of maybe like Spencer Carberry is a
Mm-hmm.
good
Yeah, it's a good one.
comparison. Though
Mm-hmm.
Carberry was last with Toronto on their power play,
Mm-hmm.
but and that's another what if too because I think I've written about this. Carberry, I believe, was a finalist with Quinn for the job in
Mm-hmm.
2022. So who knows? Yeah, what how things would have been different. And that's a guy with no Sharks or Greer connection that I know of. And so anyway, that's a side there. But anyway, though, this past year, well, Mike should know Ryan Warsofsky's work well.
Yeah.
People are easy to kind of to to raise him up because he was a big name a couple of years ago in the search,
Mm-hmm.
exciting name a couple of years ago. But I do remind people, and I don't blame it on him. So I want to make that clear. But Warsofsky runs the defense and the penalty killing, and those were two of the weaker elements on the Sharks. Again, not blaming him, really, I'm
Sure.
not. But I do point that out though that don't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I do blame personnel more for that more than the coach himself. So I guess it's possible,
Sure.
but it didn't seem like it because again, when you asked my career that question about assistant coaches,
Yeah.
the way he said it didn't sound like he was distinguishing Warsofsky from the other assistant coaches, but could be wrong though. And so that's something
Yeah.
that I'm gonna come back to.
Okay. Um, we made bold
Finally, before we
predictions.
get to our off-season plan.
Yes, finally. We've had a couple things to talk about. I think it's a few. It's gonna get hard to get news in the next couple of weeks or months because of the off season, but little things. So we want to revisit our bold predictions that we made at the beginning of the season, right before the season started. I think it was like the day of, or maybe the day after the season had started. Um, and let's start with the first one, which was basically where the
Oh,
Sharks going to
dear
be.
Lord.
This is a good one. This is a good one.
This is the bad one.
Shang, you predicted the Sharks will finish with over 70 points. I predicted the Sharks would be the worst team in the NHL, so I'm giving 1 point for me.
Yes, definitely 1 point for you.
So, but I think I remember kind of the argument around this was more about like the Sharks having good center depth, and then they just never did.
That's part of it. And also too, I just thought that they would get better seasons out of those wingers that I mentioned a
Hmm.
lot. They're offensive wingers. I thought they would get better seasons out of them.
Sure.
There's a lot to it. I also didn't believe really strongly in it.
Hmm.
I know I said that. I just thought, I'm
I
just
think we,
gonna I'm just gonna throw. I'm just gonna have fun. I'm gonna say over 70. I didn't have a strong belief in it. I'll say I wasn't
mhm.
committed to it.
Yeah. I think you didn't believe that they would be the worst team, but I think you maybe didn't
I will
believe.
say that. I will say
I
that.
don't think
I
you
don't
thought
believe
maybe
that.
they would have 70 in your heart. Like if you went back, I think if
Yeah,
it's
maybe like 60.
Sixty.
If I had put like money on it, I would I would not have said they would be the worst team.
Yeah,
I'll definitely say that. And if I had put like actual money on it, maybe
sure.
like in the 60-point range, something like that. Sure.
Mine was solely based on the defense looking like it did and
And like it
containing.
100% did.
Yeah, that was it. Uh, and also, it honestly was more. I just wanted them to be last. So if I made that prediction, and I'm happy that they were last, cool. So that's why I did it.
In retrospect, the defense was every bit you called it right. I thought that they would be able to stitch it together between the
Hmm.
forwards to it just be good enough
Yeah.
to get them to not be the worst team in the league.
Yep.
I knew they would be bad, but yeah,
Sure. Yeah, I remember saying something like along the lines of, I don't know who's going to move the puck or something for this team, and
you
that
were
actually
right.
was absolutely true.
Absolutely nobody.
Nobody, the answer. They tried to find somebody and never happened. You had a good one here. This is one that you got right and I got wrong.
Oh, okay.
Which
Finally.
is you had said that Couture won't play until at least December, and
Oh
then
yes.
I had said in the same, back to back was that Kakinen would go above a .905, which he did not.
Okay. What did I say? Did I say no to Kakinen?
No, I mean like I don't think you had a
Oh, okay. It just was our predictions. I got you. I
yeah,
got
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Okay.
during that same segment. So you were right. It was actually longer than December. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
come back until was it
January.
January?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
January. Yeah.
and only for a couple of games before he then sat out afterwards anyway. And Kakinen did look better, but I think I had said that he would perform better than Blackwood, and I don't think that was true.
No,
So,
no, that yeah. Yeah, I think with Couture, I don't think I heard anything specific, but just sort of being around, you just
mhm.
yeah, it was a little bit of an educated guess, a little bit of an insider guess, but I didn't have any specific information though. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's
Sadly, you
unfortunate.
were
Yeah.
sadly you were correct with that.
Mm.
And um, all right, next one. You said that Philip Zadina will score over 20 goals, and I said that Anthony Duclair would be the team's leading goal scorer
I
at the
have a
trade
defense
deadline.
for the Zadina thing, all right,
All
and you
right,
were
go
right
ahead.
about declare. Good job on that, but
I was. He was
Zadina
tied for
ended
the
up.
league. Yeah.
Zadina ended up
Okay.
third. Oh, this is 5-on-5. So he was third in 5-on-5 per 60 goal scoring behind
Hmm.
Duclair when he was here and Zetterlund.
Okay.
And probably, I'm going to blame David Quinn for this one. If David Quinn played Philip Zadina 25 minutes a night, then
Hmm.
Zadina would have hit 20 goals.
Yeah, I would also like to say that Zadina had to get like a hat trick in the what was it, the last
He did.
like 2 weeks to even
He
get close.
honestly,
He
David
got
played.
13.
I think David played Zadina fine.
Yeah.
Zadina still is a very rough player in a lot of ways. So I had no issues with ping ponging him down lines because I don't think he
Yeah.
earned a regular top six shift. So,
Yeah.
but
There was moments, but it wasn't consistent.
the per 60 numbers are good though.
All
Not
right.
good. They're okay. They're okay. They actually might have hit
Oh,
20 goals with
all right. This next
not
one
not not an
is
amazing amount of playing time, but yeah,
this
incredible.
next one is where I got killed and you did very well.
Oh yeah.
You said Michael Granlund would get over 50 points this year, and
Mhm.
I said Alexander Barabanov would lead the
Oh.
Sharks in points, which is really
Yeah, that,
bad.
that one that one might have been worse than no, it wasn't worse.
Yeah, it's
It
pretty
was your
bad.
worst prediction. It wasn't as
Yes.
bad as my saying the Sharks would get 70 points, but that
Yeah.
definitely was your worst prediction
It was
because
so bad.
I definitely was like,
Ugh.
I don't know,
It
man.
was more, it was the same, I think it's the same logic as the 70-point thing where it's like I didn't really believe it, but I wanted to like get something bold out there.
Yeah. Did Thomas
Man.
hurt? Did Thomas Hurdle get hurt? Is the Logan Couture not come back at all in the season? How is Barabanov leading the team in scoring?
I mean, he didn't come back at all, and Hurdle got
He's got
traded.
traded, and he still didn't.
He still didn't. He wasn't even
He
close.
had all the help in the world.
And he got injured, I think, in the first
He got
one.
injured. Yeah, he got
Yeah.
injured.
So I'm blaming it on injuries. No, he wasn't even close. But yours was pretty great. Like Granlund, I think, ended up with 60 points, something like that.
Yeah, he hit 60.
Yeah. You said 50, so
I think you like Granlund this season too. I think we
I
were talking
do,
about it. I think it was ultimately my prediction, but you backed it too.
for sure.
And yeah, it was a lot of that was just stuff I was hearing in camp. David Quinn really liked Granlund and
Hmm.
back in camp, and wasn't one of those. I gotta say nice things about him
Yeah.
because he's on my team. Mike Hoffman, Kevin LeBanc.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah.
No, it was a genuine. I really like this guy, and this guy's a really good player. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure why Pittsburgh was just salary dumping this guy because this guy can play.
Yep. And turns out, yeah, he
And
rehabbed that
turns
image
out he can
like
play.
amazingly.
Hmm.
So yeah, kudos on that one for sure. He did very well. Actually, our next four we get correct. We
Did
didn't do
we?
that bad. Yeah, our next four.
Well, you I think you did fine because you made one individual, let's
Yeah,
call it boneheaded mistake.
yeah,
But again, big picture, I was so wrong. That's I can't live it down. It's like I got a lot of details right,
yeah.
but
The
I
big
got
one.
the yeah. So
Our next two were you think that Henry Thrun will stick with the Sharks the whole season, and
right.
I think that Eklund's going to get over 40 points.
We weren't
Both of them were
super off
true.
with that. We weren't super.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Thrun started the season with the Barracuda, but I think he
sure.
did prove by the end. At least, I don't know if everybody thinks this, but he had at least the mental fortitude to stay up here.
Yeah.
And He
He
was
played
okay.
51 NHL games, 18
Yeah, he was
AHL
okay.
games. So
Sharks Rookie of the Year, baby. So
I think it was, yeah, I think he proved that, at least on this god awful Sharks team, that he can play in the NHL.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then our final
Your
two
Eklund
for,
one was a very good one, which I did support too. I like Eklund a lot
yeah,
as a player, and so but that was a good call though. And he got hot, and he with 20 games to go, you weren't looking good
I
he was
know.
getting when he was getting submarine as a center on that 5 game road trip.
Ugh. Yeah, there was a
But he
moment
got
there where I
hot
was
though. He got
like, he's
hot. He
gonna
got
be
hot.
close because he was in like the 30s, but he got
Yeah.
hot. And I think also people were somehow expecting even more from Eklund this year, and I think that was a little bit of a mistake.
It's not fair. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think I this is my prediction. This is something we will talk a lot about in the future, but I think that if the Sharks when the Sharks make the playoffs again, if Eklund is still on his team, that he probably I see him more as like a third, fourth best forward on a really, really good team. I could be wrong, but
sure.
definitely not a number one forward like a Celebrini might be. Not
Hmm.
even like a potential number two, which maybe Will Smith. I don't see Will Smith as the best forward on a contending team.
Yep.
And Eklund, maybe a third best, fourth best. I don't know. That's how I see it.
I've said that about Eklund for a very long time. I think he's
Yeah,
going to
that's about how you
be
see it too. Yeah.
a very good, like extremely good second line left
Yeah,
winger.
two away.
Yep. I think that's where he fits.
Yeah.
And that's and our final bonus predictions were Ty Emberson establishes himself as an everyday NHLer,
That's pretty
which,
good, even though he got hurt, but I think that's a pretty good call. I feel pretty safe about the Sharks bringing him back among their kind of RFA
yep.
or their UFA. We'll talk about that in a second, but
Yeah, I really loved that waiver claim, and I think once I started seeing more of him, I was pretty confident that he could stick around. And there's some boneheaded things that he does with the puck, but I think
it
he
was his
has.
first 30 games in NHL.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's a lot to work with for
A lot
him.
to
And
work
then
with, yeah.
your bonus prediction was that Mario Ferraro repairs his reputation this season, which
Yeah, a
was
little
pretty good.
shaky, but I think he did have a better season than the year
Yes.
before. And then he did, I think later on in the season, I think I mentioned that I thought he would clear 20 points. Not a lot, but he
Hmm.
did do that.
Yep.
And so he certainly didn't hurt it, I guess. I think he did okay this year. I think that maybe I wouldn't quite say he repaired it,
Hmm. He
but
patched it.
yeah,
Patched it a
maybe
little.
there's a little bit of a patch there, a little bit of a patch job. So
I mean, I think also what else is that I mean, Elliot Friedman talked about how he was kind of getting a little bit more desirable
yeah, I
too.
still don't believe that though.
That's a bunch of crap.
I still think in the end that that was maybe somebody angling for a deal there and trying to gin up a market that I don't know
Yep.
if it was really out there or not. But
Yeah.
the true though, if I want to look at it on the most basic level, that the number one insider in the NHL was talking to Mero Ferraro like he was going to bring the Sharks back a first round pick, which I never believed. But
Hmm.
sure, that then yes, reputation saved, I guess.
But he is kind of like the one guy on the Sharks defense that like I don't know, this year at least played as like a maybe a top four level, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. It's
So,
a maybe, but yeah.
so I'd say repaired, at least maybe a little.
yeah,
Gonna go with a B minus on that one. B
yeah.
solid.
That wasn't a 5-star prediction, but that was like a
Mhm.
3.5 there, a four
Yeah.
star maybe.
Okay. We've rambled a bit, and we're gonna do a
yes,
little bit more rambling here.
yes,
We're going to probably just talk about a early offseason plan for the Sharks and where
yep.
we think maybe the Sharks are going to go or what could be some good routes for them to
Who
go.
stays, who goes, some ideas about free agents that they should think about pursuing,
Yep.
even some trades that they should think about pursuing,
Hmm.
and with the idea of making the Sharks not losing sight of the big picture of the rebuild, the draft picks, the prospects. That's the focus, but making the product less embarrassing.
Less embarrassing is key. I don't know if it will
yes,
happen, but key.
on the Connor McDavid scale of embarrassing. So
And also to decide whether or not they should give Jacob McDonald 5 or 6 years on his next contract.
yes,
I actually don't know. I can't decide. No, but let's start with just the cap space that the Sharks
hmm
have. You wrote an article just kind of right now, as it stands, who you think maybe could come back, and where they would stand in cap space, and it's about $30 million, which is
Right. And
good.
some of the names you may look at the list and not see names. They think, oh, why are the Sharks bringing him back? And that's going to be part of our discussion of who stays, who goes
Yep.
before we talk about who the Sharks add.
Yeah.
But if you look at that story, it's titled "Sharks have tons of cap space this offseason. How much?" from a couple of days ago.
Yep.
Just quickly run through it. Actually, I don't know if you can pull it up while I'm talking about it. That might be a
Hmm.
good idea. But um, I
Sure.
have Logan Couture, Mikhail Granlund, Cunnin, Sturm, Costin, Zetterlin, Bordalo, Eklund, and Giovanni Smith. Obviously, there's things that could happen, like Giovanni Smith can be buried in the minors if you don't think
Sure.
he's good enough for the team. Couture obviously may not even start the season with the Sharks, may not be healthy enough. We don't know, but the Sharks have enough cap space, about 30 million plus, that they could absorb it. My estimation is counting Couture against the cap. On defense, right now I have 8 defensemen: Vlasic, Ferraro, Ruda, Benning, Burrows, Mukamadulin. I'm putting in there, Thrun and
Hmm.
Emberson. And I think the Sharks definitely need to add defense. And so I think maybe you bury a Burrows, maybe you trade a Ruda. Who knows about Benning's health? If Benning is healthy, I think he could definitely help the Sharks for sure, 100%.
Yep.
But if he's not healthy, then you can put him on IR, or you can bury him if you need to. If he's not playing, if he's healthy but he's not playing at his peak level, then you
Hmm.
can easily bury him in Burrows, because I think the Sharks probably need to add at least a couple, or at least one much better defenseman, if not two of them. And at four, so basically, in terms of, okay, so those are sort of the basic guys I have in my estimation. Also,
Hmm.
I've included all the Knizhov is still buried. The retained guys, Burns, Carlson, and Hurdle. Jones buyout is the last year. The Jones buyout is this coming season too. But overall, I have, again, once again, the Sharks at over 30 million to spend potentially, looking for 4 forwards potentially, depending on who they bring back from their UFA RFA list.
Yep.
And even though they are full up on defense, I've mentioned a couple of options to make some space on defense. And I think that they need to add at least one, if not two, surefire, much better defensemen than they had this past season, which of course is not easy to add, but we're going to try to in a reasonable way.
Yep. Yep. We're gonna, and you've already outlined who you think's gonna to come back a little bit, but
Well, in the story I did, but let's talk about each
yeah.
each guy really fast. See what you think of it too.
First
Let's
off, Kevin Lebeck.
we can throw out. We don't even need to talk about what
I know
Lebanc,
that's
Hoffman,
yep.
Barabanov. So
Yep.
let's not even bother. They're not coming
There
back.
are
Mike already said that. I know it's a new coaching staff, but
yeah,
they're
they're
not.
not
I don't
coming
think they're
back.
coming back. So
We
let's
can
just
we can
throw
talk
that out.
about a couple other UFAs that are to be, Bailey, Carpenter,
Right,
McDonald, and Cooley.
right.
Um, any thoughts there on those guys coming back?
I think that
I liked Bailey.
Yeah. I think of all those guys, maybe Bailey is maybe the most likely.
Sure.
Carpenter too as depth. Maybe if they're willing to come back in the same kind of roles that they were signed to begin with, as sort of,
Hmm.
well, Bailey was signed to an AHL contract over summer, but you can give both of them two-way contracts, and hey, you might be sent down, but we might also call you up for depth.
Sure.
And if they're willing to do that, if they can't find better opportunities elsewhere, then I think those guys are good guys to bring back. I think they kind of fit they'll do an okay job of kind of fitting the hard to play against. Not quite, but because they're on the Sharks, so awful. But I think they're good as minor league depth.
Yep.
Bailey, I think there is some people might argue that he has earned a one-way contract. I don't quite see it that way,
Hmm.
but I think that there's still, as much of the physical tools that he shows,
Sure.
that there's he makes sort of coverage, read, defensive mistakes, enough of them that I in his role as a fourth line player, that he's just not a 100% reliable fourth line player in my mind.
Sure.
And so that kind of creates pause in me, even though he does have these moments where he really does that speed and size do flash, and that's very useful on your fourth line to have a guy like that has moments of flash like that who can take over a shift here and
Hmm.
there in a game. That's actually pretty good for a fourth liner.
Sure.
But the consistency, though, that's another thing that you need as a fourth liner that I don't think he has. If he had that consistency, then he'd be a very valuable fourth liner. But I don't know at 28 if he's going to get that. Maybe he will. But
Hmm.
the other UFAs that you mentioned, McDonald and Cooley. I like McDonald actually, but I think the Sharks have so many defensemen, and you want
I
to
think they move
add.
on.
Yeah, I think you move on from him.
Hmm.
And Cooley, unfortunately, as popular as he is, I don't really see a spot for him unless he's willing to go down to, or the potential of going down to the East Coast League a lot,
Hmm.
because I think the Sharks need a bona fide number three NHL goalie. I'm not sure who that would be. I haven't looked at that part of it, but there are guys out there that you feel good about giving them NHL games, and you feel good about them being your number one guy at the Barracuda, and they've done it. They have a little track record of it, so there's some reliability there,
Yeah.
which Cooley doesn't have. As good as Cooley looked at times last year, he was also looked very rough at times too, and so that's not what the Barracuda need. I think they need some stability.
Yeah.
And so I think in your kind of your organizational depth chart, you have Blackwood, you have Vanacek in some order. You need a clear cut number three that can stay healthy, unlike a Makiniemi. And then you can let Cooley battle with Krona and Romanov for 4 through 6, which means maybe one of them up with the Barracuda rotating
Hmm.
and one or two of them down with Wichita.
And maybe he does that. I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
I would like it as a story if he was
Yeah.
still in the Sharks
Yeah,
organization.
and he shows if he shows out with Wichita and with the Barracuda, then call him back up, and maybe he is a phenomenal story, like a
Hmm.
real late bloomer, and he's going to be angel goalie at 27, 28, maybe so. If he's willing to do that,
Yeah.
then of course, great kid, great personality,
Hmm.
so no issue with that part of it. But just I don't think that you can say that he is a reliable number three in your organization goalie at this point. I think that'll be a real mistake
Um,
unless you're, yeah, it's going to be a huge gamble, just as big a gamble, if not more so, than gambling on Makinami's health like they did this past offseason.
100% agree. I like it for the story, but and also an interesting one is Itu Makanyemi, who is a UFA, even though he's 25, because he just did not accumulate enough games.
Hmm.
Um, so do they bring Makanyemi back
No,
after
I don't.
his multiple
I
injury
don't see
seasons?
it. Yeah, I don't see a spot unless you get rid of Krona or Romanov, which maybe he
Sure.
could, but I don't think as much as you like Romanov in the season, I don't think either goalie did so much that if they were traded, they're not
Yeah.
untouchables in any sense in organization. So, and
Agreed.
Makniemi is talented, and Makniemi is a guy that I guess if Greer cares about stuff like this, they did trade Burns for him in part, and
Sure.
so if you don't want to make that trade look like a total loss, then maybe you give him another shot. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if the question is Makanemi or Cooley as sort of in that pool of your 4 through 6, then
Hmm.
you might choose Makaniemi because Makaniemi's ceiling is probably higher. But there's an argument for that, even though he's not as great a story as Cooley. But again, though, just as it's simple, whatever it is, you can bring back Makaniemi instead of Cooley. That's fine, but just
Yeah.
you need a clear cut number three.
There's
That's
going to be
that's all I'm saying.
another goalie there.
There's got to be a goalie ahead of them on the depth chart until Makaniemi or Romanov or Cooley or Krona prove otherwise, which maybe they will. But
Yeah.
you need to protect yourself, which the Sharks did not do this past offseason.
And I don't think they want to repeat the same mistake of giving Makanyemi a spot when he's injured all the time.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they will. I think they learned their lesson, so I could be
We'll
wrong,
see.
but
Or it might come back to bite him, and Makanyemi for some reason gets like iron hips and knees, and he's the best goalie they let go. Who knows? There's always that risk. All right, UFAs are done. Let's go with RFAs next. RFAs to be Luke Cunnin, Philip Zadina, Thomas Borlow, Jack Stepnika. There's a lot. Henry Thrun, Kalen Addison, any Ty
Ty
Emberson.
Eberson is a big
Yep,
one. Yeah, we
Ty
don't have to get it. We don't
Emberson.
have to get into the Barracuda guys. That's a whole nother discussion.
For sure.
But
Most of them I think
with
are coming back. What do you think?
no, I would say no. Actually, let me look it
I'd
over
say
again. Well, I don't
well,
know most, but Cunnin is coming back for sure. So if you're not a
sure.
Cunnin fan, we've talked about Cunnin
No,
until we have nothing left to say about him. But he's I'm sure he's coming back. I'd be shocked if
for
he
sure.
wasn't.
Bordalo.
I want to clarify. Bordello and Thrun are not technically RFAs insofar
Yeah.
as they're 10-2C. I might be saying it wrong, but 10-2C free agents, meaning that the Sharks do need to give them a qualifying offer as if they are RFAs, but teams cannot give them. They're not eligible for offer sheets. So
Yes.
basically, the Sharks have them if they want them. And I do think the Sharks will qualify both of them. So, okay, maybe you're right about the most part. I think
Hmm.
there's a real question about Zadina and Stanika. I
Yep.
know that Mike was complimentary of Zadina in the offseason exit or the exit interview. So he's a maybe.
Hmm.
But I would say that you can you can probably do better in free agency, but
Hmm.
Zadina is young. And so if you think that he can find his game here, and the game that we talk about is not the scoring, right? I think that we've talked about Zadina a lot, that he needs to kind of grow up, mature, and be happy with a game where he goes 0-0-0 on the point sheet, but he plays good defense. He is responsible there. Forecheck causes a couple turnovers and that kind of stuff. He needs to be happy with things like that, and he's not quite at that point. But I would say though, yes, I think they bring him back, but I don't think it's as much of a slam dunk
Yeah.
as people might think. But
I think they let Studnicka go.
yeah, that's another one that I'm not sure about. I think that he was okay in his audition as a 4C, 3C to end the season. I think he's an okay depth guy, so maybe they bring him back and start him off back with the Barracuda. And if you have some injuries or whatever, then you can call him back up. I think hoping for Couture's health, obviously, but I think that they need to add another center too, like a legit NHL center, middle six guy,
Yep.
to protect themselves in case Couture is hurt again. And Stanika obviously isn't that guy, but he's a depth guy. Maybe it could be between him and Carpenter. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Maybe that's who he was competing with in his cup of coffee at the end of the season. Stanika, that is, to see if he could take Carpenter's sort of 14th forward Barracuda player role. I don't know. So
Yeah. I didn't see enough from Studnicka, I think there
that's
was
fair.
moments, but I don't know. I don't think you're gonna get more than what he's giving currently. If
That's
I had to
fair.
make a guess,
That's
yeah,
fair. I would still say, you know what, you're probably right that the most part in terms of bringing back artists. I would say they do bring him back because it's obviously a low investment
sure.
and he can be Barracuda depth.
Hmm. Good. Yeah, that's
I
fair.
don't think they bring him back though and give him an NHL job. I don't think he was that good in his time. So I'll say that for sure. Yeah.
Um, then you have Henry Thrun and Kalen Addison on and
Right.
Ty
Thrun, we know
Emberson
they're going to bring back.
for sure.
Addison, I would say no.
Addison, no, interesting.
What do you
Uh,
think?
I'm also leaning no. I think they trade his RFA rights for like a seventh or something.
No, you're not getting seventh. I don't think you're getting seventh for that.
Why not?
He had more value when the Wild traded him, and all the Wild could get was
Oh,
Raska and a fifth round pick.
hmm.
He he's just a very limited player. I don't think you would get a seven. I don't think so. I think you just don't qualify him. He'll sign somewhere. He'll hook on, and he obviously can move the puck, and he could still
Hmm.
develop into a Eric Gustafson, that kind of guy
Hmm.
player, right? But I don't think that you would get much for him though, or anything for him. I don't think that. I would push back against that. The other guy we forgot too was Emberson, which I do think they'll qualify him, so they'll bring him back.
Yeah, so Ty Emberson's back, Thrun is back. and then Addison, no.
Hmm. That's my
Uh,
call. Do you
yeah,
think you think they
I
bring
don't
him back?
I don't think they bring it back either.
Okay.
I don't think he's worth nothing. I don't know. We'll see. I think if a team is going to like him enough to sign him when he becomes a UFA, why not take a seventh for his picks? I just want another pick.
I don't think I don't think
I don't
things.
know.
I know that the same reasons why Minnesota traded him are
Mm-hmm.
those were the flaws in his game. I don't know if they exceptionally improved by the end of the season,
Not really.
and so
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree though.
he
I
definitely
don't
didn't
think he's
add to his
bad.
value with the Sharks, even with all the playing time he got. Right? I think that we can agree on that. So if his value was a fifth and Raska, which I think disappointed some Wild fans because like they probably looked at his points and thought he can get more. But I think that people around the league are kind of pretty aware of his limitations as a player, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's why that's all he got.
Sure,
And we can agree that he didn't raise his value with the
sure.
Sharks. And I would say he probably lowered it because he
And
got
I would
plenty of
have
playing
argued
time.
a seventh is
And
less than a fifth.
yes, that's true. That's fair. That's fair.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I don't think we're literally quibbling over a seventh. I don't think
Yeah.
he's coming back because I just he didn't do enough to be the guy that the Sharks need to move the puck, and
Mhm.
he also just his physicality is very poor. Like he's just not a good physical defender in any way.
Yeah,
He
I
doesn't.
mean, he's competitive. You can see like he's trying. I think he wants to be, but I just think the physical limitations,
It's pretty
unless he comes
impressive.
back
Yeah.
this summer in just, and he is fairly young, so he's just 23. So I don't want to cap him, but
Hmm.
or put a cap or ceiling over him. But
Sure.
unless something like that happens, the player that we saw last year is not good enough to be an NHL defender.
Hmm.
Good enough to be an angel puck mover, yes, but as a strictly a defender, no.
No.
And the Sharks aren't good enough to have a specialist there. They need a guy that can kind of do more than that than be a specialist because the Sharks are basically that their defense is made up of a bunch of specialists that aren't really good in their specialty either.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah, so I think you let him go, and I would predict you. Yeah, we'll see if I'm wrong, but I don't think you get anything for him. So
Yeah.
I think you simply just don't qualify him. So
That kind of leaves what you've outlined in the article.
right. Right. Maybe you include like a Bailey in there, but Bailey's a guy that can go up and down or something like
Yeah,
that.
Bailey
Zadina, you can throw
competitive.
in a Zadina in there, and he could
Hmm.
replace Smith on this projected salary cap list. He's not going to make a lot more than Smith, and
Hmm.
so that might make sense
Yeah,
for the Sharks. But I think roundabout, I think four forwards, a defenseman or two is about the
where they're
shopping
going.
list that we're talking about.
Yep. And we'll talk. I guess this is a good time to outline then. What does this team need most? Like, what is the if we had to go from like top to bottom, other than like good players, what do they need the most in terms of position? I think we touched on it with Addison, right?
Mhm.
A better two-way defender who can play 20 minutes a night. I think is
Right.
probably a good starting point.
Right. And I also want to mention too that we're going to do this with the mind of with or without a Smith and or Celebrini.
Sure.
I assume that the Sharks do not get the Celebrini pick. That the pick, whoever they might pick, if it's not Celebrini, that guy probably isn't ready to step in. I don't know what you think of the who might be available at 2 or 3 to the Sharks, but that guy may not be ready to step in. Whereas
Hmm.
Celebrini, I think people think that he can step right into the NHL. Smith actually, I think, might start off at wing. And one of Quinn's last availabilities with us, actually, I think his very last one, I think he was asked where he kind of thought that Will Smith might start off, and Quinn suggested that he might start off at wing. Which, yeah, David Quinn's not around anymore, but I think that sort of that meant that thinking though is not off the path. That
Sure.
maybe you start off at wing, and then you see if he's ready to take on center in the long term.
Hmm.
And so I just want to mention that. So positionally, you don't have to write in a spot for Smith up the middle. Celebrating, you might write in a spot up the middle, but let's assume that either way with him. And so anyway, in terms of the order of need, for me at least, I don't know what you think, but I think that they need a true two-way defenseman,
Hmm.
number one.
Sure.
They need a competent two-way center in case Couture isn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even if they get Celebrini, because I don't think you want to, even though he's your number one pick, you don't want to assume that he can take on that job, a Logan Couture like job
Mm-hmm.
as a 18-year-old. I don't think that's fair to him. Maybe he can. The hype is strong with him, but uh, I don't like doing that as a sort of when you're constructing a team. I don't.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't want to just give a teenager, make a 21-year-old, whatever, like make give him that kind of responsibility. And so that's no, that's one, two, a defenseman and a not a Couture level two-way center, obviously, because that's going to be out of the Sharks' price range, but somebody that can kind of do a facsimile of similar work. So better than a fourth line center, obviously not quite a first or second line center kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I would say kind of hard to play against middle six depth at wing is
Okay.
positionally what I think the Sharks need. But that's
Mm-hmm.
third. I think they need to improve their defense. They need to make sure that the center position is more secure. And if Couture happens to be healthy, then maybe he goes to wing, or maybe the guy that he required to play center can go to wing too. I think that'll be fine. That shouldn't be too big of a deal there. Or even Granlund, right, can go to wing. So I think that's fine. Um, and then hard to play against middle six wings. Not a fourth line guy, but a guy that can play up a little bit. Third line won't embarrass you. That kind
Yep.
of guy. After that, I think that other things I'm thinking about here is you want guys who are good room guys, leadership guys, guys that you want around your young players, guys that'll teach them how to win. Obviously, you want hard to play against players, so I think
Sure.
that's really important. And then finally, in terms of this isn't positional need, but this is also an important part of it. You probably need somebody that's willing to take a short-term contract, which could mean a higher AAV or giving
Mm-hmm.
them an extra year on their contract than you normally would, because you obviously don't want to invest, and Mike's not going to. You don't want to invest 6, 7, 8 years in somebody. The Sharks aren't in that position. So,
Yeah.
like, if we're looking at the top of the free agency class, like a Sam Reinhart, there's no point in even discussing a guy like that, I think, because there's no
Yeah.
why we even come here, but also, too, it's just not a good fit with the Sharks. You may as well have just kept Timo Meyer in that case. So,
Agreed.
those are sort of my parameters. How about for yourself in terms of position or other parameters?
So this is also just me, but and not probably what they're gonna do, but I would look
Hmm.
for guys that are under the age of 28. So I'm looking for
Hmm.
dudes that are not, unless they are a specific veteran for a specific like part of the team.
Hmm.
Um, I think if you're looking for dudes that are going to grow with this team, you want to be in the 26, 27 range in age. I want
Hmm.
somebody who um, is kind of on the upswing of their career rather than somebody who is going to just be stupidly expensive because they've already made it. So I'm looking for like high upside picks, uh, guys that are like just starting to crust into their hopeful ceilings, basically. And then
Hmm.
I'd look for improving uh, your physical game from your forwards as well as your um, just your overall defensive structure, I think, on the defense, because it's
Okay.
the guys that we've got currently are not good at that, and I I think if you round out your team with a couple of those guys that fit those parameters, and I do agree that they do need a better defender, but I don't know how they're going to get it from this free agency class. I think you have a couple of ideas, but
Yeah, I do. Yeah. One
um,
more long shot and maybe one more realistic. I
I got
think
a
the
few
26,
depth
27
guys.
thing, though, that I would push back on is just that that's going to be hard to find, because that's
Yep.
exactly what will probably be out of the Sharks' price range, whether it's
Yeah.
via trade or via
Yep.
free agency.
I have a few names.
Yeah.
Not. I think there's
Yeah,
just
we'll
interesting
get into
names.
that, but I just think that the premise of it, I wonder if the Sharks can even can. And I'll just give you like two archetypes, not guys on
Hmm.
your list, but
True.
obviously a guy like a Noah Hannafin. We talked about
Yeah.
the Sharks had interest. Seemed that Elliot Freeman reported that he had interest early in the season, and
Yep.
he probably would be the perfect guy that would. I think he's 27, a perfect guy to improve the Sharks' defense, but also be a good leader, maybe grow with the team.
Hmm.
But besides, obviously, his contract, he signed like an 8-year contract with Vegas. Also, too, it's not a realistic get because those are guys are super desirable. Those are guys that are going to cost a lot. Sharks shouldn't be trading first round picks for anybody for sure at this point, right?
Yep.
Another guy, archetype, archetype guy could be at forward at around the age range I thought of is Sam Bennett. And
Hmm.
Bennett is 27. He
Sure.
has 1 year left in his contract after this year at 4.4, which is not a lot, but maybe the Panthers need to clear some salary cap after this off season so they can re-sign or Sam Reinhart maybe
Hmm.
right. But the thing is that Sam Bennett, 27, center, he plays a hard to play against game with some offense. He's going to be very desirable. So he
Yep.
probably can command a first in the open market. So that's not a area that the Sharks can't compete in. So the players that I'm picking are have some strikes against them, be it their contract, be it their age, be it maybe both. Right? It was because those
Sure.
are players that are more likely for the Sharks to acquire, like a Granlund last season. Right? You need players with a strike or two against them because
Hmm.
if they are guys with zero strikes against them, they're no Hannafin or 27. They are ideal top four defensemen. They
Hmm.
are well rounded, right? Hannafin plays an offensive defensive game, right? If there's no drawback with this guy, you're not going to get him because
Probably not.
you're just not. Yeah, just you can't afford him. But
I
anyway,
think I
so
think
let's
you the reason why I'm saying that is,
yeah.
and I don't think they're going to be able to afford the Hannafins, all those kind of things. I do
Mhm.
think that they're going to try and get some, or they should try to get somebody that's going to be with the Sharks for a longer
Sure, that's a
window.
fair point. Yeah, I know a couple of
And
names you have in mind, so yeah, that's a
I
fair.
got a
We can get
few.
to that, but yeah.
And one of these might end up being, yeah, we'll get there. But
Okay. So let's see. Okay, so we're jumping into. I think we're gonna go free agency first,
okay,
and then we have trade ideas.
yep,
So that'll be kind of fun to go through because that's gonna be who knows, right? With trades, right? Who's available, who's not. But
sure,
we I think we both have interesting ideas there.
love it.
So okay, so free agency first. I'm gonna go first here, and I'm gonna go with
Okay,
my long shots
the
and
long shot.
the
All right,
long shots, right?
do it.
Okay. So to me, the profile of the player, I mentioned a number of things that I'm looking for in a player: leadership, hard to play against, but also too short term. Obviously, the contract, right? But if you can find a short term kind of culture changer, then that'll be great in terms of just being a leader and player, and also guiding the young players, and also just making your team better
Hmm.
and more competitive. And so this is like the least like I'm gonna start with the least likely.
Okay,
And I look at the free agency list. Daily Faceoff just came up with their top 50, and that was a good resource for this. And pie in the sky, Steven Stamkos.
that's the
And
one.
there's no reason for Stamkos to sign here. He wants to win. So even if he doesn't go back to Tampa, I think he goes somewhere where it's a better competitive situation. But
Hmm.
the one thing the Sharks can offer more than some teams is they can just throw a ridiculous amount of money at Steven Stamkos. And
True.
so on Daily Faceoff, let me source this correctly. The their salary projections are from I think it's AFP Analytics, AFP Analytics. So to give full credit to them,
Hmm.
AFP Analytics has Stamkos because Stamkos is older. They have him projected at 3 years, 6.3 million AAV.
Okay.
Sharks can offer 3 years, 10 million
Hell
AV.
yeah.
Well, how does that hurt the Sharks?
Hmm.
And the pluses here obviously are you have a guy that last 6 years he's still averaging 40 goals a year.
Hmm.
And it's not even just that. I know he doesn't even fit the profile of the player that I mentioned, the positional need, where I said I'm being hypocritical here, but defense, center, then wing.
Yeah.
But Steven is obviously such a special player and obviously has won his Stanley Cups too. I think that's a big part of it. And kind of there's more of that need there, right? I know there's another guy, Patrick Kane has that profile too, but Patrick Kane is more of a setup guy, that sort of thing, right? I think having a guy that can just put the puck in the net
Yeah.
is a little bit more of a need than a setup guy. And But I think that's, again, Stamkos has said many times, winning is his priority. So if it's not even Tampa, then it's going to be somewhere else. It's not going to be San Jose, even in San Jose where it offers stupid money. But obviously, I think the pluses here are great because he just is a great mentor. You would foresee him as a great mentor for William Eklund, for Will Smith, for or hopefully Macklin Celebrini. That this
Yeah.
this guy is so much gravitas, and so that would be dream scenario. And 3 year doesn't hurt. At that point, the 3 years, most of your retentions are about done. The Carlson one would be about done at that point. You have a lot of cap space. You're not hurting yourself re-signing and celebrating or whatever if that comes up, right? Because the term is so short. But okay, but not going to happen. So I'm sorry I even brought it up.
Steven Stamkos.
my
Next,
my
Jake Gensel.
yeah, exactly. But Stamkos is special in that profile. That's again
Agree.
that franchise leader player,
Mhm.
and that's specifically why I picked him out. And also short term too. Again, a guy like
Okay.
Gensel specifically is going to get a long contract, which is
Yeah.
not anywhere where the Sharks need to be investing in because by the time Will Smith is in his prime, Gensel is going to be in his early 30s. Right? Doesn't make
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
Okay, on defense, we talked about legit two-way defenseman. This is also a long shot, but I think that this is more realistic than the Stamkos.
Okay.
And you want somebody ideally that can play on your power play and is strong defensively.
Mhm.
And the guy that I've highlighted there, the Sharks were able to pull him, and he was willing to come here. And also when these guys come here, they have to know that they're not here to win the Stanley Cup. They're here
Sure.
to lead and to be a good example and to make the team more credible. And if they're okay with that, then it's a good fit. Again, Stamkos is 34 and he's already said he wants to win. So I think it's a bad fit probably because he wants to win a Stanley Cup before he's done. So the guy I have here is actually a little bit younger. And I think this kind of makes sense because he can hit free agency again
Mhm.
and still get another big contract and still win a Stanley Cup in the kind of the back half of his 30s. But Brady Shea.
Interesting.
Brady Shea, underrated offensively. He has 31 goals in his last 2 years, which is actually fifth in defensive goal scoring in the last 2 years after Yossi, Makar, Carlson, and Darling. I bet you didn't know that. And he can play both special teams.
Sure.
He is actually he's the offensive explosion for him is the last 2 years. He wasn't doing this before when he was started off in Carolina and when he was in New York, he wasn't scoring like this. So in that part of it, his reputation is more of a defensive guy. And
Mhm.
there's so many things I like about his game. He can kill plays. He's physical. He's 6'3". He's a great skater who can skate the puck out of trouble. Which obviously we know the Sharks, right? Their defense. You need guys that can skate it out of trouble and who can pass it out of trouble.
Mhm.
And Shea can do both. So the big question with a guy like Brady Shea, obviously, is how much does he care about winning right now? The good thing is that he is 30. So if you sign him to a short-term contract, just give him stupid amount of AAV, then he can go back and hit UFA in a couple more years and get another big payday, chase a cup if he wants to do that. Or if the
Sure.
Sharks are better at that point, maybe he stays, who knows? And so I don't know too much about the leadership culture part with him, but I assume that should be fine with him. I think he was a Canes alternate captain. But okay, so AFP Analytics in the Daily Faceoff article, they have Shea at a 6 year, 7.4 million AAV.
Sure.
And I think he's the second most expensive defenseman, free agent defenseman out there after Montour. I don't see Montour as a fit, by the way, because he's smaller and he's not as much of a two-way guy as Shea. But
Yeah.
again, what's stopping you in terms of the cap of giving Brady Shea 2 years, $20 million? It's stupid, right? Brady Shea, $10 million player, it's the stupidest thing you've ever heard of, right? But is he good enough to both improve your power play and your actual defending instantly? Yes. Is he a true number one defenseman? Of course not. That's why you had to pay number one defenseman for a guy that probably on a other team is better suited for your number two or three defense. But
Mhm.
he can add so much if he comes in with the right attitude and he wants to lead and he wants to be that guy for you.
Mhm.
That if in terms of in terms of just like making money, like 2 years, 10 million AAV, 3 years, 9 million AAV, something like that, right? like he's going to go back to free agency, and chances are he can recoup whatever the AFP projection there is there. He can recoup that.
It's an interesting
And
thought.
yeah, so that's a guy of the long shots that I think could make a little more sense for both sides. The Stamkos one, I don't think makes sense for Stamkos,
Hmm.
but the Shea one here, I think financially it can make some sense. It's the clearest need on the Sharks, which is defense at both ends, offensively and defensively.
Hmm.
It's I think the type of style he plays is exactly what the Sharks need, and obviously there's offense there, and he can go back and hit free agency again. So I think that I would he's a guy that again I haven't dug into how he is in the room, that sort of thing, right?
Sure.
I'm assume he's decent at it, but that's a guy that at least on the surface is kind of to me a perfect guy to bring in because I just there's more of a reason for him to come in because a guy like that is not getting $10 million offers every day. Right? Stamkos has been there, done that with the big money. Stamkos doesn't need big money. He seems to want to win. Brady
Yeah.
Shea has not made like he's made good money in his career. He's made 4 million, 5 million a year, I think, right? But he's a guy still looking for a payday, probably.
It's an interesting
And
thought. I'd say that
yeah,
the only pushback I would give
mhm.
is that, well, still unlikely, but
Yeah, he'll say no. That's the pushback.
well, that's that. And I just players typically tend to favor term over like the short term deals, like
Absolutely, absolutely,
historically. Not everyone,
absolutely. But
but
if you
some
give
do.
him such a stupid AAV offer, he would have to at least consider it, right? If he said
Yeah, of
like, "Here,
course.
here's 2 years, $20 million,"
Hmm.
think about it.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you could be like, well, then we're trading you in your second year, and you're going to go to somewhere that's like retain half, and then
That's
say,
possible too, right? Of course. Oh,
yeah,
he can retain. Well, he can
you
actually. Yeah,
could,
because Burns will be off. Yeah, you're right. But it's not even for that. To me, it's the idea of
sure,
bringing respectability, credibility to the defensive core that really badly needs it. It's
sure,
basically building a better environment for William Macklin to come into or play in next year, for Will Smith to come into, for your Macklin
yeah,
Celebrinis. You have a defenseman there who, yeah, he isn't a true number one probably, but he can do a better facsimile at doing that than Mario Ferraro. And so you're
yeah,
pushing Ferraro down too, which is a good thing. And Shea is actually left-handed, so you push both them down. So Ferraro is in a better spot as a second pairing defender
hmm.
on a bad team. And Shea is miscast, but not as miscast as Ferraro was as your number one defenseman. I think it's interesting. At least I don't know.
I
I
like the idea.
Yeah,
I do. I just we'll see.
yeah. It's not
Um,
realistic. These are long shots. So again,
no
I
long
want to
shots.
preface that I don't think this is going to happen. But if you're to, I would say that of actually between Shea and Stamkos, I would prefer Shea actually because I think the Sharks kind of need that more. Not just again, people will be like,
Hmm.
oh, it's just why like so you can get 60 points and play yourself out of I don't know the number one spot in the draft. But look, this team was so embarrassing last year. They really need to be respectable and not just for the fans or whatever, but for the players around them. They just need to be a better environment for them.
Yeah,
And so I think Shea can provide that. Just that sort of brings sort of again a lot more credibility to the defense. So
I think there's something to be said that no matter what they do, they're still going to be bad.
no, they will be. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
So
But it's about
getting.
being more respectable in
Hmm.
your. It's as simple again as and we mentioned this a few times. It's as simple as having a team that is going to work its ass off to lose 4-2
Hmm.
instead of giving up in a game and losing 7-2.
Yeah,
It really is. That really is the
I get
point.
that.
I'm not trying to build a playoff team here. I'm trying to
Hmm.
build a competitive product that is a good environment for your young players to walk into. That's what I'm trying to do. And I think it's probably a 60-point team at best,
Yep.
maybe not even. But you can get like 58 points in a season, 50 points, but be a lot more competitive than the Sharks were. So it is the point. So teams like Anaheim were, I think, are more credible to watch than San Jose and Chicago. Salt Lake, Arizona, whatever they were. I think that
You
or even Columbus, right? Like you want a
need
more
something.
you just need a more positive environment for guys to walk into. Maybe those other teams aren't the best examples. I know there's a lot of negativity in Columbus this past year too, but
Sure, sure.
um, maybe Anaheim might be an okay example of that. Of of you do still want to add some veterans. I do have a lot of questions of how Anaheim built their team, but I think that if it does pay off for them and the guys they sign, like for Toronto and Gudas and guys like that, if they're a good example, if they rub off on some of your big time prospects, then maybe it's well worth it.
Hmm.
Taking swings on guys like that. And so I'm kind of come around to that. Before I was all about draft pick, but watching this past year, they need to bring in some decent players. And I think Shea is as good as you can get defensively for a better fit than say like I mentioned like than a Montour. So I don't know. Do you have any long shots? Because I have some lower end targets, which is probably going to be more relevant for the Sharks. But
I think the only long shot I have is, and he's not even that. Like he's probably not coming here because
Mhm.
he wants to probably go somewhere that's um, a better fit is Nikita Zadorov.
Okay.
Um, Zadorov is 29, so he's a little younger. He's not terribly old. Zadorov is a good. He's a physical defender. He's got a
Hmm.
good slap shot. And that's kind of what he is. He's known for those two things. Like he's got a
Right.
great slap shot. He's a physical defender, and the Sharks are missing those two things on their defense for sure. They don't have. I think this is why NHL teams are going to give Sidorov more money than he's actually worth, and probably bid the Sharks out. But if you could get a little bit of a 4 or 5 year deal for him at a decent AAV, then I think that that's somebody that at least you staple in as a rock solid piece of your defensive core. He's not going to
Mm.
do what Brady Shea will do, which is like improve the offense from the back end, but he's at least a night in night out defender that you can rely on for bringing the physical game.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. He wasn't
he's like
my
my long
ideal.
shot.
But
He's my long shot only
hmm.
because I think he goes to a better team.
Oh, sure, for
I
sure.
think
I
it's
mean,
like a
all these
Hannafin
guys.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at him, but I feel like for my long shot, I want to pick somebody that
Hmm.
can can patch a lot of the Sharks' problems.
Sure.
Zadorov, I don't see as somebody that he's going to be look very bad on a power play. I think.
He looks okay.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think he will
Yeah.
look, yeah, fine. But I think they're going to be trying to get more, I don't know, out of Mukamadulin or more out of guys like
Maybe it's
Thrun.
a fair point. It's a fair point. Yeah, I think I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Hmm.
So they need somebody. They need anybody.
They really
is
do.
is the point. So
But that's like my long shot. I still don't think he's coming. It's just he's one of the higher end defenders that I would want.
yeah,
Other
yeah.
than like Shea and Pesci and stuff that are, is it Pesci that's up or
Pesci
who's
is
the
up
other?
too, but I just don't see
Yeah,
Pesci as again. If I had to pick one of these long shot guys,
yeah,
Shea is to me the best two way guy. Pesci is
yeah,
more
for sure.
defensive.
Yep.
Montour is more offensive, and I
Hmm.
think that they do really need a guy that's can give you both. So
Yeah, I think a way of building this team is to just try and find pieces that are going to be here longer term, and I don't know how much there is this on this list of UFAs.
yeah,
But
yeah, that's why I see things differently than you do on that point. I think that you need to bring in positive examples for the guys for the next couple of years. It'd
yeah,
be great to find a guy that is like a 6 year solution, but it's not
sure.
likely because those guys teams want to keep those guys, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not seeing that as unless something falls in your lap, I'm not seeing that as necessarily happening. So
Hmm. I got a few lower guys. You got some
mhm.
lower down guys too?
Yeah. Do you want to start off this time with some lower
Sure.
guys?
I have a two they're both currently playing third pair, but good defenders, and Jalen Chatfield and Alexander Carrier from the Preds.
Hmm.
Chatfield's in the third pairing in Carolina. This is his I think it's his first year really kind of breaking out. He played 78 games last year as well, but this is his second year as a full-time NHLer. He played
Hmm.
72 games this year, put up 22 points. He looks good. He's a very solid defender. that has at least a little bit of puck moving skill and is in his limited time puts up decent points. So, and he's a guy that I don't think is going to be that expensive just based on his track record.
Yeah,
Um,
AFP has him at what was it? It was
where
like
is he at?
3 years, 2.7 AAV.
Somebody that like if you gave him 4 years and you gave him 2.5, maybe he takes that because you've given him an extra year.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
Greer's done that already with was it
Benning and
Benning?
Burrows. Yeah.
Yeah, and Burrows. He's used the longer term aspect of it to his advantage, and I think him or Carey is a better option. I think Carey is a not better in that I think Chatfield's a I like Chatfield better for the longer term aspect, and I
Hmm.
think Carrier is a little undersized, but he's a better defender, and I think he's going to command a little bit more money, like in
Yeah,
the
Kerry's a more
20s.
proven player. He's
Yeah.
also he's a more proven player. He's played bigger minutes than
Hmm.
Chatfield. So
So they're more like rounding out your defense core,
mhm.
making sure that your third line isn't getting caved in every
But they
single
honestly
night.
might be the more realistic ads, and then you
Yep.
promise them more opportunity, and this is where the pro scouting comes. It's really
Hmm.
important that you find a guy that maybe is underappreciated where he is, or underused, not underappreciated, underused,
Sure.
and then he can blossom in a larger role, and
Yeah,
that
somebody like
is
Chatfield
ideal. So
fits that mold, right? He's kind of only had 2 years of really pro experience, and he's
mhm.
already, he's on a maybe Stanley Cup competing team and doing very well.
Right.
And I like that upside, and he's still young. He's like 27 right now, going to be 28 soon. So I like it. And one of those guys would be more realistic if you don't get like your high end defender.
Sure.
Who else you got?
I have it's a popular name that I've seen out there, but I actually have Dylan DeMello
Cool.
because he's a guy that can play a little bit two way, is a hard defender to play against. He hasn't been used on a power play that much the last few years, but he has a history of it in the past with the Sharks and whatnot that he can do a little bit of that. He can move the puck okay. He's obviously not going to cost as much as a Shea or whatnot. I
Hmm.
think AFP has him at 4 and 5, 4 years for 5 million.
Hmm.
And he comes here. He obviously, again, the leadership aspect, he has to fill that out. And I can see a fit there. There are other guys on this list. You talk about the physicality. I know a lot of people talk about Brendan Dillon. Ian
Sure.
Cole is a more defensive guy on this list, but I think the Sharks, again, if they're going to add one or two guys, I think they need a guy. If they're going to add, if this is going to be their top defensive signing in the off season, they need
Hmm.
somebody that at least has the promise, I think, to be a two-way guy more so. So
That's
that's I think that's where that's where I'm coming from, because you talked about the Sharks' inability to move the puck right. They had a lot of guys this on their defense this year that probably profile as more defensive guys than anything.
true.
And if you have nobody that can move the puck among them, they look worse, right?
Hmm.
And so this point was made. I was talking with somebody, and he made this point that I thought was made sense, that individually the Sharks' defense, a lot of these guys probably could play on other teams and be okay.
Hmm.
But when you mass together 6, 7 guys that none of them are really adept moving the puck,
Hmm.
and none of them are great defenders that they can just live off of that they look worse as a whole.
Hmm.
If that kind of makes sense,
Sure.
because you basically have 6, 7 guys that are throwing grenades to each other, basically, instead of a better mix.
Hmm.
And so I think that I think looking at it that way, that they shouldn't lean too defensive for
Hmm.
sure, because you're just gonna have, he added Brendan Dillon to this mix, as popular and likable as Brendan is, and but who's gonna move the pucks though? You still have this problem, right?
Mugabadilin.
What am I doing, right? Yeah. And sure, you can be like, well, why aren't you bringing back Addison then, right? But I
Yeah.
think that you need, again, that you don't want to go too far into the offensive end too, because there are
Hmm.
guys that we talked about this a little earlier, besides
Gostis
Addison,
Bear.
but yeah, Gustafsson, right? They're going to look really bad on the Sharks, really, really bad. If even if you had them this past year, sure, your power play might look a little better, but they would have
The problem is
they would
like,
have racked up a -50 maybe.
yeah, the problem is that once you eliminate your Gostisbeheres, your Gustafsons, your D'Angelos, and then your guys like Labushkin, Zadorov,
Right,
Dolan,
right.
Cole, like you've
Right, your
eliminated
specialist, right? Your defensive odd. That's why
everybody
I'm looking at DeMello as maybe a little. This is
middle ground.
not fair, but like as like a little bit of a poor man's Shea kind of. Shea is the ideal in the market, a guy like that.
Sure.
But if you can, if DeMello can go in and do some of the same, and then also in some of my trade targets, I have the same idea in mind. I'm looking for a more two-way type, not a guy that's more
Hmm.
one way or the other. So, and
Yeah.
DeMello is more defensive than offensive. I'm not saying he's
I mean,
not, but
he's still a good puck mover though.
he's a
He
little bit
is.
more in between though, right? And so
Hmm.
again, like I don't think a Dylan or Ian Cole would have looked good at all in the Sharks
No.
defense. Like not because again, who are they moving the puck to? And so whereas Shea or a DeMello that would also look bad, but a little better. A
Yeah.
little more respectability is the key word that I
I
yeah.
would not hate a Dylan DeMello on this team. I think he would add an element that they don't have.
Yeah, competence.
Competence, at least moving the puck. I wouldn't hate it. I think it's probably a better, more realistic idea than putting $10 million of Brady Shea, even
Sure.
though I get what you're saying about the Shea thing.
Yeah, it's just it's pie in the
It's
sky,
the fun.
Shea. But
Yeah,
who is ever going to offer Brady Shea $10 million a year?
might be the Sharks.
That's my thinking.
I guess yeah, fundamentally I kind of lean a little different in terms of I want to find these guys that and like Chatfield or guys that and a couple of the forwards I'm going to mention, the guys that I think you grow with longer term than
Right.
guys like DeMello. But it's hard because they could also fall on their face and be nothing.
That's what I mean. I'm
Yeah,
tired of trying to outsmart the system.
yeah.
That's what the Sharks tried to do this past off season. Like,
It didn't
hey,
work.
Philippe Zadina, he's going to be a
Sure,
20 goal scorer. All these guys are going to find their game. We're going to flip them for draft picks.
sure.
When it bombs, it's so as we saw this year. It's
Hmm.
so ugly. I'm over that. I want to try to bring in guys that have flaws in their game but are a little bit more proven.
Speaking of gaming the system, here's my conspiracy theory,
Yes.
and also could be a guy that the Sharks could target. It's not even
Okay.
not even a conspiracy theory. Um, I don't think the Bruins like Jake DeBrusk that much. And I think that
Okay.
they're not. I think they're going to let Jake DeBrusk walk. But there are times when
Is
Jake
he a
DeBrusk
UFA or RFA? He's a RFA, isn't he?
is a UFA.
Oh, is he UFA? Okay.
Yeah, he's number 25 on the daily face-off list. Pretty
Hmm.
far down. I think they're going to let him walk, only because he's very inconsistent from
Sure.
year to year, from like in the middle of the season to out of the season. And when he's on, and when he's actually, because he plays on their top power play in Boston, he's
AFP has him at 5 years for $6 million.
here's my conspiracy theory.
Yes.
I think he's going to price himself out. I think a lot of teams are going to.
That's interesting. Okay.
I think a lot of teams are going to offer guys higher on this list more money, like Sam
Uh-huh.
Reinhart, Jake Gensel, Steven Stamkos,
Sure.
Patrick Kane,
Right.
all these dudes that are like going to get some more money. And maybe not Patrick Kane, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Tyler Bertuzzi, Toffoli,
Hmm.
Drouin. And I think DeBrusque is going to hold out for so much money that I think the Sharks are going to be the last option. And then they're going to be like, hey, buddy, Jake DeBrusque, how's $5 million times five sound? And then we get
How's
what's
1 year,
super.
$7 million?
Yeah, or how's 2 years, 6.5 or whatever,
Yeah.
like something crazy. And then, I wouldn't hate it because he's he is inconsistent, but he's at least he's a player that can play on the top power play of a very good team and has some scoring punch. And um, when he is on, he actually competes very well. Like he's playing well in the playoffs right now. Actually, I think Boston and Toronto are tied in the third period, 0-0,
I'm looking at it.
game seven.
That's what I'm looking over. I'm looking over my phone. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my also pie in the sky, or maybe you go after like somebody like Jake DeBrusk, somebody who prices themselves out of the market, and you sign him to an interesting deal. See if you can get some value out of him.
Okay, but I would wonder about you want the right guys around the room, right? You don't want guys who are
Hmm.
chasing their stats, thinking about, oh, I'm gonna be, let's say you give DeBrus 2 years, 13 million.
I don't think he's more of like a
I don't
head
know.
case guy, but
Not a head case guy. That's what I mean. That like I don't think I don't think Duclair is
mm,
necessarily a big head case guy. I don't think
no.
Zadina, like all those guys we talked about, right? LeBanc, Hoffman. I don't think
Hmm.
they're toxic to the room or anything like that necessarily, but I want guys that are going to block shots when you're down 4-2 in a game. I want
Sure.
guys that are going to play to the best of their ability. Uh, the last minute of a game you're losing 3 to
Hmm.
1, like the first minute, guys like that more so.
Well, I got a couple
And
guys.
excuse me.
I got a couple guys for
Okay. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know about that part with the brush so much,
you.
but
Hmm.
I don't get that sense though that he's necessarily seen as. I could be wrong, but
Sure.
so I'm not against bringing in a guy like that. There is an upside to that, but again, though, like if you bring in too many of those guys, and like the Sharks did this past off season, and they all fall flat,
Yeah.
then it gets real ugly. And so I'd like a little more reliability of some sort, but at least guys that have a track record of it, even if they're older or whatever. But
Mhm. He's my option only if they can get him at a good deal, and that's
well,
so. Yeah.
6.5 is not a good deal, but short term though, you're
Short
talking
term
about, yeah.
or long term, but very, very low.
Yeah, yeah, that could be a little pie in the sky. Yeah, because he's
Yeah.
also a 27, 28-year-old, like kind of a power forwardish type, right? So he'll
Yeah,
he'll get something out there. So
he will. But
someone will think they can fix him. He's one of those guys that someone will think, like Zadina. Someone can
yep,
fix him. I
yep,
can fix him.
I can fix him. All right, my one of my favorite ones, and ones I honestly think they should put in for um, a good offer, like an offer that, like, okay, I got to take this offer, is
Mhm.
Dakota Joshua. Have you seen Dakota
Oof,
Joshua play? Why not?
dangerous. Yeah, just because he's a 1 year guy. I don't know.
It's not because of that. It's
Yeah,
like I mean, yes, he put up points this year, so he's got like 30 points,
yeah,
60 games or something like that, playing a little lower in the lineup and moving up and down for Vancouver. But the guy, he's physical, he's
sure.
young, he's on the upswing. He threw 240 hits this year.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
as the forward, I think he's a guy who competes extremely hard and has like a I don't know, that hard to play against edge. And I
Sure, sure.
really think that that's the kind of guy that he's going to go after.
That's
Um,
fair.
and he's also able to chip in. Like even on this team that has loaded weapons up front, he's still chipping in on at even strength. So I don't know. He is dangerous though, because you're
Yeah.
right. He's not proven. It's same with Chatfield. Like this is his second NHL year. Like this is his second full year in the NHL.
I like him more
But
than Chatfield though, so I think that is a good call. So I
hmm
think that if you could come out with, you got to
hmm
pick some safer guys. I think that's the thing I'm saying, that not that you go like all safe guys,
hmm
safer guys. You can take a swing on a guy too, but I
he's
think the
young. He's
Sharks,
got
the
upside.
last offseason, I think the Sharks they took chances on too many guys, and then they all kind of blew up in their face. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So a
I
little
also think the
more.
guys they took chances on sucked. So
Right, right. So fair. So I think a little more mixture of risk
yeah.
of risk, I think is not a bad idea. So okay, that's fair. I think this is good. I think this is a good idea.
hmm
AFP, by the way, has him at 3 years at 3 million, which is credible, reasonable.
So you give him a 4 by 2.5 or 4 by, you give him that extra year.
Well, I think he's going to be in demand though, so I
Yeah.
think that you probably need to give him like 4 and 3.5. You need to give him a little higher AAV and maybe an extra year than other teams. So you are
Yeah.
taking a bit of a chance, because you can't just bury his contract in its entirety.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that, yes, does fit a lot of things that the Sharks are looking for. And actually, I did mention this. He as a winger is third on my priority list of position. I focus mostly on defensemen and centers,
Absolutely.
but if they come out with a Dakota Joshua as sort of a middle six winger type, that
hmm
even if he's not scoring, if he's not putting up, I mean, he actually, yeah, 18 goals. I don't know if he's going to match that pace with the Sharks, especially
Probably
of all
not.
teams, but if he can settle into the 10, 15,
hmm
that's still useful to you, and he's competitive, like maybe a slightly more productive Luke Cunnin kind of in
Yep.
that thereabouts. Yeah, that is actually the kind of guy they're looking for, definitely on the wing. So that's fair. So I think this is good.
And so
Yeah,
the wing thing versus center, it's like it's always just the market
center is
variable. It's just
hard, right?
yeah,
Center is
it's way
hard. Yeah,
better.
yeah.
So but I like his upside. I like his age,
Hmm.
and I think it's a good bet to try and put a good offer in for.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got
I think that is actually a
War.
really good one. That again, because I actually hardly even looked at the wingers. I
Mhm.
look at some of these wingers like the class, the Teravainen, Bertuzzi. I don't think
Sure.
there's they had some offense, but I don't know. I don't know why they would come here. I don't know if the fit the term too, because
No, I don't think
I
so.
think they look like longer contract guys. So I don't think that's a good fit for the Sharks either. Toffoli, I'm not seeing it right. I don't think Domi is a good like culture fit. He's an offense first guy. I don't think that's what you need on this team. But Joshua
Sure.
is actually a good fit there. I think so. Even
Yeah.
if the offense the upside isn't quite as high as other guys, I think that yeah, I think that's a really good pickup. So actually, same reason why I wouldn't go after Declare again. I know he's very popular
Yeah.
around here, but he's not a guy that stands out to me that you need to be chasing.
Agreed.
But
I got one
I,
more fourth liner that's going to be pretty cheap.
okay.
Well, probably cheap and as a center.
Hmm.
Is Kevin Stenlund.
Oh,
Kevin Stenlund from Florida. This is his another guy. I like these guys that
nice.
like
These are some deep cuts here.
yeah, so Kevin Stenlund, he's bounced around forever,
Hmm.
for many years, and was at Columbus and Winnipeg, now in Florida. He's like anchored the Florida's fourth line, from a defensive standpoint. He's a
Hmm.
very defensive player. Like he's very like if you had to pick one thing that he does, it's defense, and
Hmm.
he is a penalty killer. Obviously, he's 6'3". He's big. He can be physical, although he's not that physical. He's kind of just like the neutralizer on the ice, is the way to put him. Like he doesn't he just kind of makes plays stop. And I kind of like it. And he potted 10 goals this year, which is not
Hmm.
awful. But he's kind of like, if you need a dude that's going to be like your discount Nico Sturm, I think Nico Sturm has a little bit more offensive punch than Stenlund does.
Hmm.
And I think you could put him on your fourth line.
Hmm.
And I like
Okay.
that. And he's going to be cheap because he was
Right.
only on a 1 year deal with Florida. So if you get him for 2 years, 1 million apiece, you'll probably be doing pretty well just from a penalty killing and defensive standpoint,
Right, but
which
will Florida just match that though? Because I
maybe.
okay. Okay.
Or they don't. Or you give them an
Okay.
extra year, like the same thing.
Sure,
Like
sure,
they're
sure.
trying to get a 1 year, you're trying to get a 2 or 3 or whatever. I like him.
Okay.
I like these kind of guys. He's also pretty young too. He's
Yeah.
27, I think. Yeah. So
All right.
defensive center.
So let me ask you, who is your favorite guy of the guys I mentioned? And then I'm gonna
Mm,
your guy that I heard from you that I like a lot is Joshua. I think that is a
great.
good target for the Sharks.
Yeah. I would say my favorite is DeMello,
Yeah,
I think.
realistic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like Shea better as like he's a better player, but I
Everybody
think
likes Shea better, but
I think DeMello fits better. DeMello's got a puck moving edge, and he's somebody I wasn't considering just because he's a little older and stuff, and but I get why they would add somebody like him, and I'd like him more than adding like Gustas Bear or Gustafson or somebody who's such a one-dimensional player.
right.
So I like him better than that. I wonder how much DeMello's going to get on the open market. They've got him at 4 years, 5 million. Oof.
Yeah, which is a little rich, but I think that's one of those things where the Sharks they can afford
Hmm.
it,
They could,
and so if he's good in the room, if he's fine with losing and being a good example, then great.
yeah. Who else you got? Anybody else?
I think that that's it for me on the free agency side. There aren't
Hmm.
a lot of centers available.
No, you could try to get like Wenberg or
Yeah, or
Weber or
Monahan,
Monahan. Yeah.
but those guys,
Yeah.
yeah. So there are other guys I might have in mind for that. So
Hmm.
we can move on to the trades then because I have some ideas. Actually, for trades, I have a kind of a deeper list of
You got
centers
it.
and defensemen, slightly deeper list. So
I like it.
yeah.
I Mine is I think we're gonna differ in this because we kind of previewed it before, but I think my goal would be to complete the Eric Carlson trade
Okay.
to like Hoffman's leaving obviously, but the two players left over from that deal are Granlund and Ruta.
Hmm.
Um, Here's my worry. Granlund is so important to this team because he's the only competent center that we currently have that isn't
Yeah.
injured. And the only player that can put up 60 points on this god awful team that I worry that they're going to keep him past the deadline, even though his age and like I took
Oh, sorry about that.
I
I
know what
put on
happened.
the game.
Oh no, man. What happened?
Oh, Boston just tied it. I'm gonna turn off the volume.
Yeah, turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
Everybody's ears just cracked. Anyway, it
Sorry
was
about that,
tied at
guys.
once, by the way. Um, so complete the Eric Carlson trade. So I want to find a suitor for Mikael Granlund in a way that gets the Sharks moving forward before they lose him to UFA or
Mhm.
try and keep him for whatever reason past his UFA rights next year.
All right, complete the Eric Carlson trade. Save the world. Sorry, I've been
Save the
watching
world.
Heroes too. So
Save the world. Um, so I would trade. All right, I'm gonna start with mine then. I would trade if you could,
Mhm.
Mikael Granlund to the Carolina Hurricanes for Jack Drury and a draft pick,
Okay.
probably hopefully a second or something like that.
Oof.
Where they're
Yeah,
gonna
I'm forgetting
overpay.
that, but yeah. But
Hopefully they overpay. Something that like you feel good about. Jack Drury is a young center. He's 24. I think he's centering their fourth line or third
Mhm.
line. He's come up and down the ranks and he's had some up and down seasons.
Right.
But he's kind of filled out into being a NHLer now. And Carolina famously doesn't have a really good center depth. They have Sebastian Aho and then a bunch of I call them three pluses, I guess. They're using
Mhm.
like Jordan Stahl, Kuznetsov, which whatever that's gonna be like next year. Kokanyemi, they're using who else they got? Um, Jack Drury, bunch of guys
Mhm.
that are like three pluses instead of having a number two. And I think if Mikael Granlund slotted underneath Sebastian Aho as their second line center,
Mhm.
along with their wingers that they have that are killing it and they're obviously good defenders, next year I think that they're just going to run it back as
Right.
a powerful Stanley Cup contender. So I like it.
Yeah, I think I think it obviously goes counter of making the Sharks team less embarrassing.
100%. It does.
So I think for this to work, you really need to have Couture healthy then probably, right?
Yeah.
Because if he's not healthy and your center depth, if let's say you traded Granlund
Oh
and
God.
let's say you were able to bring in a decent-ish center,
Hmm.
but let's say free agent, let's say you brought in Monahan, for example, right? Which he's not a favorite target of mine, but let's say you brought him in. But all of a sudden your center depth is Monahan, maybe Celebrini if he's here. If he's not here, what is it? Sturm, Stenlin. You're
Conan Eklund,
yeah, and
Stanley
those
Drury, I guess.
yeah. I guess Drury is right in there too, of course. So Drury would probably move ahead of maybe you move ahead of Sturm probably. So it would be like
Monahan, Drury, Sturm,
yeah, which is
Stanley.
still very rough. Yeah. So,
Awful.
yeah, I don't know. So you definitely need Couture to, I think, slot in there to make that trade.
Feasible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what do you do at the deadline with Granlund? Do you trade
I,
Granlund at the deadline?
I think,
What
I
do
think
I
at the
think?
deadline, then that means that you've got through like 50, 60-ish games with him or whatnot. Right. And so then you can kind of give up the ghost of the season at that point. So you can take what you can get at that point. But
Hmm.
in those 60 games that he's presumably healthy and he's playing for you, especially if Couture is out, he's still really valuable for the
Hmm.
room and for the leadership and whatnot, right? That I think that you kind of had to keep him. Though Drury is good player, young, upside, that
Sure.
sort of thing, right? So there's argument for that. If it's just a draft pick, I would say no way.
Yeah, I agree.
Even a second, I'd be like,
Unless it's for the
it's got to be
deadline.
stupid. It's got to be a first for, because. And actually, I let's talk about this because this is sort of a side. I know we've been talking forever, but I've been teasing this for weeks, right?
Hmm.
I've I'm gonna go back. This is a bit of a callback, but it's something that I was really wrong about.
Hmm.
Mikey Asimon. It's gonna
Oh
seem really
yes,
random here, right? This
Mikey Asimon
conversation.
talk.
We've had this conversation. You and I have had this conversation, but such a mistake to trade him. On the surface, it looked great.
Hmm.
Waiver claim. You flip him for Nemestikov, who becomes a fourth round pick. What asset management by Mike Career? what do the Sharks need more this past year, even this coming season, than a guy that is hard to play against, that would be grateful to be with the Sharks, like Asimont waiver claim would have been, and who can not embarrass you in middle six duty
Hmm.
than a guy like that.
Yeah.
And so I should have thought this is something that I just thought I should talk about now because it's related to Granlund. Like, stop prioritizing these draft picks, especially if it's not that high a pick. So if it's a second, think about it. If it's a first, for sure. If someone's going to overpay, right? And this could also apply to Nico Sturm and Matt Benning and Mario Ferraro, guys like that. The teams might want, but they may not want to
Hmm.
overpay for. We saw this past season that guys like this are so valuable to just keeping the ship afloat. Can you
Hmm.
imagine William Eklund growing up this season without Mikhail Granlund here, and Couture is hurt, and you trade Hurdle? Hurdle, you got a premium package back, so I understand that trade. Mikey Asimont, all he got back was a fourth round pick. Like, you can get fourth round picks any day of the week.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation I've had with other people. I've actually spoken with an agent who is not Mikey Asimont's agent.
Hmm.
Let me be very clear about that. I've
Sure.
spoken with a head coach, former NHL head coach, about this, and they're like, "Yeah, that's the kind of exact kind of player that the Sharks need."
Sure.
You talk about, like, signing a Dakota Joshua, right? You could have signed a Mikey Asimont, got probably similar offensive contributions, similarish, maybe not 18 goals,
Yeah.
but that kind of attitude. That's, again, the point is not to make the Sharks into a playoff team. It's to it's to turn them into a team that loses 4-2 instead of 7-2. And it's not just because
No.
7-2 makes you feel bad. It's, again, a reminder. We're talking about development of young players around them, the attitude that they learn from, right?
Sure.
And so Mikey is the kind of player that 100% what you want in this organization.
Hmm.
And I know that I'm kind of like, it sounds like I am like fetishizing the guy, like it's too much, but he really is
Well,
a guy that, like, he is a culture guy. He is a all out player.
my and
Yes.
I agree. And my I guess there's two arguments. One is
Hmm.
you're correct also because like if Mike Asimon continued to grow with you and you had him on a cheap deal for a long period of time, like say you kept Mike Asimon's rights last year and signed him to a 3-year, $1 million deal, you could then trade him if you really wanted to for a package. Like, and
Right.
that's what like Tampa
Barclay
Bay would.
Gaudreau. If you get a Barclay
Mhm.
Gaudreau return for him, no
Sure.
problem. I
They
understand.
did that. Tampa Bay did that with Hagel. They did it with Janot.
Right.
They did it for these
Right.
guys
If you
that
get a
are,
Janot offer for a
yeah,
player like that, then okay, no problem. You can
yeah.
you can lose the culture for a first round pick.
But I guess the point is that right now,
But
if
not
the
for a friggin' fourth round pick, though. And
yeah,
that and
right
that
now if the Lightning try to trade Asimont, they'd get more than a fourth.
they get
And
a
that's
fourth,
like
yeah.
they
I
get
don't know.
more.
They may not even get more than a fourth, maybe a
I
third.
think
I
they
don't
would.
know. Yeah, maybe. But the point is that's kind of the kind of guy that the Sharks need. And so, okay, so
Hungry.
we talked a lot about Greer's mistake with over indexing on this certain type of winger, right? I've talked a lot about that, right? And
Sure.
I think that Asimont deal is sort of symbolic of getting seduced by the draft pick and being seduced by the asset management. Oh man, I went from waiver claim to a fourth round pick. What a deal for me. And it
Well, that's
is.
pretty good.
It was. It was on
Yeah.
paper, right? But
Hmm.
when we talk about I'm going to go back to Pierre Maguire, what he said about the art of team building. I do think that's a real thing, and
Hmm.
I personally underestimated that going into this season. That's sort of the type of player you need to keep things afloat, to keep things competitive, to keep things not embarrassing, to keep
Sure.
all that kind of stuff, right? And that's the player you need. It,
Hmm.
it is. It just simply is. And it's not, unfortunately, offensive winger that is, if he's not scoring, he's not doing anything for you kind of guy.
Sure.
And I think that I'll give it another example, right? Like a Mike Hoffman type, right? He's a guy the Sharks, honestly, the Sharks should have cut him mid-season. They
Yeah.
just should. What, you're not going to get that draft pick for him. You tried, you're not getting for him. What's he doing otherwise?
Hmm.
That's and so I felt like the Sharks, Mike Greer, they just wanted that pick so bad, for these guys, so they kept them on, and hoping to wring some value out of it, right? when they're not actually helping the team though in any sort of way, even on a competitive side. And so I think it's an easy thing to do. If I was a GM, I would have fallen into the same trap. You kind of fall in love with the draft pick, the idea of the draft pick, the lure of the draft pick, right?
Mm,
And once again, I'm not saying that a guy like a Mikey Asimon is untouchable. You get a
sure.
first, you get a second, fine, we'll talk, right? But not for just a fourth though. And that's the sort of thing that led the Sharks to a 47-point embarrassing ass season. I do think that. Like I've been thinking about this for the last couple of months. I don't think it's worth a whole podcast about, so that's why I didn't write about it. But that's a kind of sort of a crossroads kind of move that shows you where the Sharks frame of mind was, how they saw a player like Mikey Asimon,
Hmm.
and what it should have been, what would have been a little more team building,
Yeah.
would have been a little more like, okay, a fourth is a great value for this guy, but he brings so much to just keeping things together on this team. Like he is a good rebuild player, perfect rebuild player. Don't have to pay him a lot. He's going to be better than what you pay him,
Sure.
and all the intangibles,
Now,
just enough skill that again he doesn't embarrass you out there. It's not like
mhm.
throwing Nico Sturm as your second line center. That would be bad, despite Nico's intangibles.
Now this also goes
So
back to the um oh my gosh, the Greg Wyshynski argument of like if the job was to be the worst team, and they
you
were
can still
only
be
the
the worst
worst,
team with Mikey ACMI. You just wouldn't.
maybe. But if you get enough of
Chances
them,
are, chances.
maybe not. They're only 5 points behind Chicago.
I just think there's a balance to that, right? Like
Hmm.
yes, you still want to. Your focus is still the number one pick. There's no doubt, right?
Sure.
But
There's a
look,
balance.
yeah, there's a balance, right? The Sharks were the worst team, but they still only have a 25% chance at the number one pick.
Hmm.
So what if they had 55 points instead of 50? What Chicago had 52 or something like that, right? And still have a good shot at the number one pick. And so I don't think that Mike Greer was thinking that far ahead. Like, hey, I got to make this team so bad. That's why I'm no. They just thought waiver claim fourth round pick, easy deal.
Yeah.
I don't think Mike Greer was thinking that far ahead on that one. I don't think so at least. And so anyway,
I think they do need to add more of those guys
yeah.
coming
I mean,
forward.
Dakota Joshua, right, is
Agreed.
what you're talking about, right? Like, not again, not the exact same kind of player,
No.
but yeah, those are the guys. Those are the guys you need. You need
Hmm.
more of. Honestly, you need more Cunnin. You need more Joshua. You need more AC Mont, and then you have some skill coming up. You protect them. You also protect those skill guys a little bit too. You have guys that are going to stand up for them. Guys that
Hmm.
are going to make space for them. All those
Hmm.
all those things too. So yeah, I think it really. Again, I'm going to go back to it. That I think it really that move actually, because that move was, if you remember last year when it happened, when they traded Asimon, it seemed to come out of nowhere, right? Because it was like, wow, this guy has been a great ad, and
Yeah.
he's actually scoring a little bit because he was playing with Couture, I think, right? And from what I've heard that the room was shocked too. I mean, the actual Sharks players, they were legitimately like, why'd you trade this guy off?
Yeah.
And I bet they were wondering too, for just a fourth, why a fourth round pick? Like nobody, I don't think anybody, like, as much as the Hurdle trade hurt, I do think the Sharks understood, like the players on the roster. I think they understood why that trade was made.
Yeah.
It's still two first round picks, and the team is in a rebuilding situation, and Tommy wanted out. I think that's a big thing that people forget, that Hurdle really wanted out.
Hmm.
Mikey Asimont wouldn't. He's a guy that you want, guys who want in, and Mikey Asimont is a guy who want. No, I mean, honestly, yeah. Like I know
That's
that's kind
true.
of corny, but you want guys who want in, and Mikey Asimont's a guy who wanted in all of this.
Hmm.
And so yeah, and like I said, yeah, I know I've talked to people, like the room was legitimately like a little bit WTF about it, like what the fuck.
Yeah.
And everyone understands, again, if it's Barkley Goodrow for first round pick, as great as Barkley was in his role,
Hmm.
it's a first round pick, and people get that. But they can count, right? First, but a fourth, That's again, that was good a good value trade, but that was awful team building. And Mike Asimont wasn't going to get you 5 points this year to get ahead of the block. He wasn't going to do that. But again, just the right guy that you need in a room, right guy you need on the ice to just kind of keep things a little less embarrassing. Yeah. So
And I think
anyway, so
I do think ultimately they will get that. Like if, at the end of the day, I I think that's going to be part of my career's offseason.
well, I think that they're going to make up for that mistake, kind of, right? Because you
Yeah.
hear how Greer has described the player he wants, even the player that Quinn described that he wanted, right? They actually seem to agree on the player that they wanted, even though
Hmm.
Mike fired Quinn, right? And
Yeah.
who is that player that wants to come here and is going to give you those intangibles and work their ass off? Hey, it's a guy you had, Mikey Asimon. That's
Hmm.
why I kind of stress on it, or I repeat it, because you had that literal guy and you could have had him for cheap too.
Yeah.
You don't need to overpay, or you can still overpay for Dakota Joshua, but overpay him, keep Mike Asim on for cheap, and suddenly the team is looking a little more, at least a little more feisty, at least a little less embarrassing. And
Yeah.
so anyway, we're going back to your point about Granlund, I would be very careful about that. I would still, again, think about the team building. Okay, maybe a second round pick, fine, but let's not forget that part of it. Is all I'm saying. Like, don't just chase the draft pick, kind of. So
I would try and chase a prospect, and from a team that's a competitive team trying to win. Not
fair.
a prospect, or at least a young NHLer. How's that?
Fair. How long have we been
But
talking though? I think we got to get to our trades. Yeah.
yeah, that's the first one I got. Is that the second part of it is trade Ruta
Oh wow. Yeah,
for
we've been talking for over 2 hours though.
yeah.
Okay. All
We're
right.
almost done.
Okay.
I
Let's
would
let's let's
trade
let's, let's speed through the trades.
I would trade Ruta for like a fifth round pick.
That's
Or
all you
like
got. Okay.
fourth round pick. That's pretty much all I got. I mean, I thought about trying to get like a puck moving defender, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's time to spring, trading high end picks and stuff
Okay.
like that. So
Oh
maybe
yeah,
next year.
I totally agree with. So all my guys, none of them profile as
Yeah.
guys that I think would cost too much,
Okay. Who you got?
because okay, yeah, I'll handle more of this. Like, my idea is lower end targets than long shots like Stamkos or Shea.
Okay.
I agree with you that the Sharks aren't in a position to trade high picks yet, or good prospects.
Hmm.
But it is still the same profile player that I'm looking for in free agency. Guys that are maybe a little more hard to play against, also bring that leadership part, are going to be okay with losing. That's really important. Like, you got to
Hmm.
talk to these guys and be like, look, we're probably going to lose 50 games next
Yeah.
year. If things go great, we're going to lose 50 games next year. Hopefully win
Sure.
25 or 30 or something like that, but we're going to lose 50 games next year. So with that given, or with that, if guys are willing to accept that and kind of take on or prioritize, like, hey, we're going to leadership role with the team.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so the guys I have in mind, I've thought of, I've looked up some forwards and defense, and I think a lot of it is looking for guys that are sort of distressed assets too, like a Granlund, guys that their team may be looking to save money somewhere, maybe looking to add somewhere, and this guy may not be the most ideal to their plans.
Okay.
And so they can save some money and they can redistribute that guy's money elsewhere. So I'm gonna start at defense first, just because I think defense is such a big focus. And one team that, and this has been talked about a lot actually over the last year or so, the St. Louis Blues have a lot of defensemen that are probably overpaid a bit, and they don't. Last couple of years, cumulatively, they haven't added up to a playoff team. They've been added up to sort of a
Sure.
fringe team, right? Like, just missed the playoffs, but not an actual playoff team, right? So they may be looking to kind of redistribute and maybe looking to get younger and all that sort of thing, right?
Hmm.
And so the Sharks maybe can kind of help on the cap end of it and not trade a lot, or actually even get something back because they're taking some money off for teams. Oh, just looking at Toronto, Boston going to overtime, huh?
God, that was close.
Yeah, who that one was. Anyway, so the two guys I'm looking at here are Justin Falk or Nick Leddy. Justin Falk has 3 years, 6.5 million. That's a bit pricey, but I like the
Sure.
the term though. 3 years is good for the Sharks. 3 years after
Hmm.
this one, and Nick Leddy 2 years at 4 million, which is more ideal. But Falk is a better player.
Hmm.
And so Falk does have a reputation for being more of an offensive guy, which isn't perfect, but I think he's become a better defensive player of the years. He's
Yeah,
like 32. Letty used to be more of an offensive guy, and he's less so. He's more of a defensive guy now, but he's a guy that used to be on a power play, so maybe you could put him on there. He wouldn't hurt you at least. And again, these are players all with flaws. We're not going to get you're not going to get Kale McCarr in any of these kind of trades, right? But these are guys that can help you and make your make your group a bit more credible. And so if
sure.
you miss out on a Shea or a DeMello and free agency or whatever, right? And let's say you pick up a Chatfield, right? Kind of a guy that maybe he's got a little something. You still want a little more safety, a little more reliability. So a veteran guy whose game might be declining, but can still give you some good minutes, I think could be a good idea. And so both Falk and Letty are still 20 minute plus players for the Blues. Falk had kind of a down season offensively, so maybe the Blues would be willing to move on. And also his contract is a lot worse than or a lot more expensive than Letty's. So
Okay.
he might be a guy that you can get on the cheap. And so one of those two guys I think could be interesting if you couple him with let's say even a DeMello or one of those defensemen you're looking for, defense starts to look a little interesting. I think the overall goal is you want to push a Ferraro down to 2 or 3 on your depth chart. I think that'll be good for Mario and good for the Sharks. And
Sure.
you want to add a little bit of offense, a guy that's a little bit two way. And so Falk and Letty aren't as maybe as ideal or perfect a fit as Shea or even DeMello, but I think that they're around the range of what you're looking for at forward. And I don't know about the actual like trade cost, but again, I think because you're taking money off from St. Louis that I think they want to get rid of, that it won't be too expensive, or you might even get something back extra. At forward, two guys that stand out to me,
Hmm.
and I already talked about Bennett. That actually is not ideal because he's a guy that I think will get a first back. I think if Florida did make him available, but two guys I think could be distressed assets out there are Pageau, the Islanders, JG Pageau.
Okay.
Two years left after this year at 5 million, or Yanni Gord, 1 year at 5.166 million AAV.
Yeah.
And I think both those guys, because the Islanders are still kind of in this mode for whatever reason that they still want to win, right? And Lou Lamoriello, he's older, whatever, right? That's still his mindset, right?
For sure.
And I think that Pageau is a pretty good player
Hmm.
still, but maybe he's a little bit overpaid. Maybe they want to use that money elsewhere. And he had a little bit of a down season offensively. And so he's a guy that is accomplished two-way center throughout his career. He's a guy that if Couture isn't healthy, that
Hmm.
he probably wouldn't embarrass you as your second line center.
Sure.
And if Couture is healthy, maybe Couture goes the wing, or maybe you push Pajo down to your 3C, right? And he kind of just can make the team better. And he could have a bounce back season like Ranlund did to some degree too. There's that potential there, right? And the
Hmm.
commitment is low, 2 years, and the cost shouldn't be that high. I could be wrong about these guys. Maybe the Islanders and maybe Seattle, they value these players more than I think that they might. But like when I look over the Islanders, right, and how they can improve, right, and how they can kind of make some space for more stuff, right? They have Anders Lee who underperformed this year, but he's a wing. I don't see that as the Sharks need. As we've talked about, I focus more on center and defense. A guy like Brock Nelson had a great year this past year. I don't see why the Islanders would trade him. Bo Horvat, Barzal, they're going to try to build around these guys the best they can, right? But
Sure.
can you do better? That $5 million spot with Pajo, can you do better than Pajo? Maybe you can. I think. And maybe the Islanders think that. And so he might be a guy that you're kind of doing them a favor a little bit. And
Hmm.
Gord along the same line, Gord had a down offensive season this past year, but he's a guy that is used in is capable of playing all situations too. A pretty good two-way guy. He's smaller, but he's very competitive. Obviously, has won Stanley Cups, so there's that leadership aspect that they can potentially bring.
Hmm.
Gord has won Stanley Cups. Pajo is alternate. Actually, I think Gord is alternate captain in Seattle too. And so anyway, so that there's that potential too of bringing in professionalism, class, work ethic,
Sure.
good kind of teaching kind of guy, right? And so if you're the Kraken, can you do better with Gord's 1 year left at 5 million, 5.1166? They
Hmm.
probably think they can. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but if they think they can, then you can get these distressed assets for just a little bit cheaper. And so those are two guys that jump out to me. One more guy, and we actually debated this. And so actually, well, before we get to that last guy, what do you think of
I
Falk,
like
Letty, Pajot, or Gord?
I like the Pajot and Gord route, because it's leveraging the cap that they
Mm-hmm.
have, and I think both those players are be fine with the Sharks. They wouldn't like they're not guys that you're just taking in their cap because they're garbage. Like they're
Right,
fine. They're
they're
just
bad players.
they
Yeah,
make too much money.
right.
And similar to stuff like Barclay Goodrow right now makes too much money for the Rangers.
I'm not sure how good
Um,
a player Goodrow is anymore, though. So
he's
Goodrow
fine.
3 years ago was actually a very good player, and I think he
Yeah.
deserved the contract he got. But
Yeah. So like yeah, and he still has like 3 years left on his deal. So but I do like the idea of leveraging the cap space and also getting a decent player.
the
Because right
right
now the
guy, though,
Sharks,
because
yeah.
last year Mike leveraged the cap space, but I think he got some of the
Yeah.
wrong guys.
I will say I'd call up
Yeah.
Philadelphia like
Hmm.
yesterday and say, I will take your Cal Peterson next year. Because like
Hmm.
he's sitting there, he's got 1 year left on his deal. Sharks need a third goalie. He's playing in the AHL
Hmm.
anyway, and
That's a
might as well
that's an
just be
interesting idea.
like
That's an interesting idea.
to
Yeah.
say, hey, Philly, give us a draft pick. I'll take your $3.8 million contract for next year.
I thought he
Because
was
like
5. Isn't he 5?
I think you bury he's
Oh, right. When you bury him, right? You're right.
yeah,
You're right.
3.8. So I would line up for that just because the Sharks need that in their system anyway, and Philly's gonna give a draft pick probably to get rid of him, or they just keep
Hmm.
bury it. But like I'd line up for that.
Hmm.
But I like those ideas. I really do. I think those are good. I don't know if there's any other ones that got out there, but I agree that those guys are. I don't know how much. I don't know what St. Louis is gonna do with their defenders because they do. They have got a bunch of guys that are in their 30s or mid 30s that are just making too much money and they
Right.
need to retool a little bit. So like what happens to Perico? What happens to Falk and I can never say his name. Perico.
Pareko. Yeah. Pareko.
Perico.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, I know
Falk and
they have Buchnevich as
mhm,
I've heard he's a big trade target, but they like so if you want to keep him, then maybe
mhm.
you got to get rid of some of this excess in defense, and hey, the Sharks can maybe help with that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sure there's going to be a few teams that are going to have to do some cap finagling this offseason. Like Vegas,
yeah.
Vegas and Tampa and teams that always are like super close to the cap that maybe you can pick off something from them. So go ahead.
Well, I want to add to that a lot of these guys do have trade clauses of some sort,
Sure.
and there's probably a good chance that the Sharks are in on a number of
That might be.
limited no trade clauses, like 10 teams
Yeah.
don't trade me
Doesn't
to, but if not, if you can talk with them and convince them to come over.
my favorite part about that is like everybody always says stuff like, "Oh, but the weather's good," and it's like, do you think the NHLers really give a shit about like? I mean, they might, but they
They
really care
do.
about like, how bad the taxes are, how bad the team is, how bad the travel is, how bad I have to uproot my life to be there. It's not like, well, he's used to playing in Calgary, so he's gonna love San Jose. I don't think so. That's just because it's sunny. I don't know. I don't know. Just my opinion, but because like they get 4 months off a year, they care about the weather in you know Majorca.
I think the weather does matter
Yeah,
for the families too, right? But
for the family. Yeah,
granted, though, if that's the only thing you got going for you, then yes, you're in trouble. If the weather's the only thing you got going for you, which is pretty much where the Sharks are at. So they need to
yeah,
get a few more things going for them, which is why my emphasis is on making the team less embarrassed. No one wants to be part of an embarrassing team. People might be more okay if you're losing, you're
yeah,
competitive, and that's okay. But like, no one wants to be part of history making on the losing side.
yeah. So, and I agree with you though, and I would call up for Cal Peterson and have Philly get the
That's
draft pick.
actually a good idea.
Hmm.
My very last guy that we talked about you didn't like is Jesperi Kotkaniemi. six
Yeah,
years left at 4.8 million, which I think is interesting because I think that there's a good chance he can settle in as a pretty good middle six center,
okay,
and he is the kind of guy that you can grow with. He's still just
he
23,
is.
right?
Hmm.
So, but you're not a fan of him though, right?
I just don't like. I don't think he's a very good player. That's
Okay,
my biggest. I
fair.
mean, I think he's fine, but I don't for 4.8 million. I don't. I get what you're saying because it's kind of counterproductive to what I was saying before,
Yeah, it
which is
sounds like the
like,
kind of guy you would like.
yeah, I just think it's too expensive and it's too
You just
much
think
of
he
a,
sucks, which is fine. So.
Not that he
Fair.
sucks. He just is fine. I don't know. Like what is he doing and what is he pulling in? 27 points. I
He
don't know.
hit like 40 last year, I
He hit
think.
40
But
last year.
yeah, yeah,
I think
they cut his minutes a
Carolina's,
bit. They
yeah,
cut his minutes a bit. So
I think they're kind of just stuck with seeing how that.
yeah, they
I,
probably were counting on him to emerge as a 2C sooner than he's ready for, I guess, right? So
yeah, and he might still. I mean, he's got the skill, he's got the
he's still young,
pedigree.
yeah. But so okay, so I guess let's wrap it off here. We've been talking quite. This is the longest one, so yeah. Sorry guys, I didn't realize this would be so
And the
long.
other thing
Sorry,
is
Keegan.
like, no, it's fine. And the other thing is, what would the Canes want to like? What would the deal look like for them? Is it like Kokanyemi for Granlund kind of thing?
Well,
Maybe
I think you're getting something back for them because you're taking on a contract that may not be app. It depends on how much they
you'd
like
think
him, but I
it's the
think
same
that
same GM as it was before, right? And
that's true. But
he
it's a
paid
couple years with him, and he's kind of like, okay, this is who this player is after a couple years. So maybe you're kind of doing them a favor. I don't know. I don't
he
know
like
that for sure.
famously paid like what a first and a second for him, right? What was
Yeah,
the
well, I'm not suggesting the Sharks trade that for for him.
That's what I'm
So
saying. So like
yeah,
here my thing is like the GM did that. Is
yeah,
the GM like 2 years later going to be like, okay, I'll give him away
fair.
for free?
No,
Probably won't.
that's a very fair point. I wonder what. Yeah, let's look up the trade really fast.
It wasn't a
Oh
burn
no,
deal.
didn't it? Was just wasn't he just an offer sheet?
It was an offer sheet, but wasn't it like a first and something offer sheet?
Might have been. Yeah, let's see.
Like a first and a third. First and third in the
First and a
2022
third.
draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's if it was a different GM, maybe because they'd be like, oh, this contract is not conducive to
Right.
where he's playing, which is I think fourth line left wing currently. But
Yeah.
I do agree though. I think that's an interesting proposition if you can
Yeah. Maybe
get him
more guys.
too.
Another guy I looked into, but I don't think quite fits is Farabee.
Farabee's good.
Yeah,
Interesting.
better player, more established than Kakaniemi, but not necessarily. Doesn't seem like he's
Hmm.
necessarily beloved in Philly. Or there's I don't know Tortorella, who knows with that
True.
guy. But either way, though, he's a guy that is in sort of thought of as being available in trade, perhaps. And so that guy, I don't know, Farabee, I'm not sure how much term he has left in his contract, but he's got some term, 5 million a
Hmm.
year, not too bad, young. So
Yeah, yeah. I very much like that. There was another one, Eric Chernak from Tampa, that was in some
oh yeah,
rumors.
yeah, right. Yeah, I
Maybe
actually was looking at his contract. I didn't know how much the Lightning like him or not, but he's making 5.2, which is a decent amount if you don't like the player. So
yeah, and like so that's a little bit rich but he is a good defender. So I
mhm.
mean, maybe you can call the Lightning up because they're gonna have to finagle some stuff
Yeah, they
this
got to figure
year
something out, right? So
if
yeah,
they
so
want to get
that's an interesting
Stamkos
one.
back.
That's an
Yeah.
interesting one. Yeah, that's for one for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, but I think in summary, are the Sharks a better team? Let's be realistic here.
I think they will be.
Let's say the Sharks add for my list. Let's say they somehow pull off
Hmm. Dylan DeMello.
let's say DeMello, let's say they get one of Pajo and Gord,
Hmm.
and let's say that's what they add, and maybe
Joshua and Stenland.
those are your guys, yeah.
Yeah,
But it should be better, right? And they can afford that, and so I guess that's realistic. I think that's what we're talking about, right? So
I agree. I think after you've added some more center depth, you add some more tough to play against wingers and defenders, and a puck moving defender. It's a solid offseason, and we're like a 60-point team and not a
and that's all you
47.
need. Just yeah, that's all you need. You're still going to be in competition for James Hagens, and that's
Yeah,
fine. That's where the Sharks are at, but you just need to have a better environment again for the younger players to step into. Even Joshua, hell, give him 4 million a year. Why
true.
not?
Yeah, you just need
Yeah.
you need guys that are going to be hard to play against.
Mm.
That's all we need,
Yep.
and
Yep.
maybe a defender or two that is not just god awful.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I think the ceiling is probably 60s points from
That's
that.
fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. Again, after I watched this year from the team, that would be
Hmm.
a lot better.
And this is all without even talking about Celebrini or Smith, so I'm proud of us.
Right.
Because now
Right.
in a
Exactly.
week when we have Smith signing and we've won the lottery for Celebrini, all of this conversation will be different.
And you're adding Dakota Joshua,
And
Stanley Cup
Dakota,
baby, parade down Santa Clara Street, guys.
I really like Dakota Joshua. These
I
guys
know.
that I picked out, I think, are just guys that I've been watching a lot,
No,
and
I
it's
agree.
a good play.
Dakota is the guy you picked out that I think, okay, yeah,
Hmm.
that makes sense. That makes
Hmm.
sense for this team, even for him.
Sure.
Just he's probably just looking for a good term. He's not looking to win Stanley Cup necessarily. Of course, that'd be nice, but I don't
No,
think
he's looking
that
for
he cares about that.
the money
So,
for sure, and
and
unlike Tom Tooley.
grateful for the money, the opportunity, all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff, right?
And a guy that
Like
can play up and down the
Mikey
lineup.
Asimont, and yeah, a guy who can put up some numbers for you and look okay in a middle
Hmm.
six spot. Yeah,
I like it.
I
And
can see it. I can see it.
yeah, I got more. I think I've got like a soft spot for like I don't know what that player is, like fourth line plus players. Like I think Joshua's got more than just a fourth liner, but like
Yeah.
solid fourth line players. I think I got like Beck Malenstein. If you ever watched Beck Malenstein, he plays for Washington this year.
Oh,
This is his
yeah. I mean,
first.
I don't really watch him,
This is
but
his first
I
year.
never, yeah, got into a game with him. I'm watching Beck Mellenstein. So,
This was like his first like pro year, pretty much, because he was
yeah.
a AHL or not pro, first NHL year. And that dude, I don't know, he's like 26, but I like him. He's a fence first
You should have
guy.
a soft spot for Mikey Asimont then.
I do. I really do like Mike Asimov too. I think we all did, and maybe you're right that we are gonna miss having Mikey Asimov more than the 2025 fourth round pick that we
Yeah, we
got
don't
for.
know, right? The fourth round pick could end up being some kind of player, but
Could be.
you could have got that fourth round pick next year for Mikhail
True.
Granlund or somebody, right? Jan Rudo or somebody, right? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, though,
All right, guys. This has been the long. I think this is the longest episode
this
we've
is
ever
the
done.
longest one. Maybe
Wow.
besides mailbag, I think we've had some long mailbag ones,
I don't
but
know.
this,
My
yeah,
computer's gonna die decoding this thing.
yeah,
All right,
yeah. Make
guys.
sure it's plug in.
Um,
All right, guys.
but it's longer because we also were delayed, so you
Yes,
get some
yes,
extra
yes.
content.
But we do have exciting plans for next week, and
Yep.
we'll reveal them as time goes on. Obviously, it's a big week for the Sharks next week with the draft lottery,
Mhm.
and so we'll be back there to talk about it sooner than I think. It won't be as long of a wait for the next episode, I would say.
Yep. All right, guys. Hope you have a good week. Bye.